Mastering the Lightning of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 Planning, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. If you and Arthur don't mind, I have no problem with it. Anduin also has a lot of feelings for Ginny. After all, he watched her being born in the hospital, so he didn't reject Molly's proposal. And his mental age is not much younger than Arthur, so being a child's godfather is no problem at all. No, of course I don't mind. We are all relieved that Ginny recognizes you as her godfather. Arthur laughed when he heard this. Although he and Anduin have a big age gap, they get along very well, so he naturally agreed. But, this is not appropriate. Bill next to him protested a little. If Anduin becomes Ginny's godfather, then we have to call him uncle, right? Yes, we still like to call Anduin brother. The twins also interrupted in unison at this time. It doesn't matter. Anduin smiled teasingly. From now on, you call me uncle, and I call you brother. We will talk about our own things. I don't mind. But we mind. The Weasley boys rolled their eyes in unison. I mind too. Hog quietly raised his right paw to protest. He couldn't imagine that if this girl became the goddaughter of an adult, would he have a good life in the future. These little brats had no right to question or refuse. Arthur and Molly quickly decided on this matter, and Anduin also accepted it with pleasure. Ginny in Anduin's arms didn't know what the people around her were saying. She only felt that the person holding her made her feel warm. In addition to the warmth, she also felt a sense of joy. This emotion gradually transferred and infected her. Then Ginny clapped her hands with joy and laughed like a silver bell. It seems that Ginny is also very satisfied with her godfather. Molly said with a loving smile on her face, with her hands on her waist. Seeing this, Anduin gently lifted Ginny in front of him and looked into her light brown eyes for a moment. Hey, Ginny, call godfather. Ciao, godfather. Ginny repeated Anduin's words in a somewhat unclear voice, and then excitedly opened her hands and stretched them towards Anduin's face. Seeing this, Anduin cooperated and moved closer to her, allowing Ginny to touch his face. Okay, then Anduin will be one of our family from now on. Arthur laughed at the harmonious two people. Anduin also laughed, and then seemed to think of something, and a beautifully carved bracelet suddenly appeared in his hand. As he thought about it, the bracelet in his hand quickly changed size and became just right for Ginny's small hand. This is a gift from the godfather to you. He gently put this high-quality protective bracelet on Ginny. This bracelet is a high-quality product that he spent a lot of my thrill to make. It contains 3 layers of armor spells that can be automatically charged, and mental protection spells that can be automatically activated. It was originally a protective equipment he prepared for himself, but today he happened to recognize Ginny as his goddaughter, so he gave it to her generously. When Ginny saw the well-made bracelet in her hand, she was immediately attracted to it. She played with it attentively and burst into small and hearty laughter. Bill smacked his lips with envy when he saw this scene. He knew that Anduin had a lot of good things in his hands, but apart from the brass communication amulet and protection amulet that everyone had, Anduin had never given him any other alchemical props. Who knew that his sister would get one right away, and looking at the bracelet, it was obvious that it was very precious. Ginny is such a lucky child, to have a godfather who loves her so much. Molly laughed. By the way, I almost forgot that I came out to call you to eat. Hurry up and get to the table. Then Anduin accompanied the Weasley family to enjoy a sumptuous meal. He was in a good mood today because he had a goddaughter, so he had a big appetite and ate a lot. At the same time, listening to the Weasley family chatting about Quidditch anecdotes at the table, this family atmosphere also made him feel the warmth he had not seen for a long time. After the meal, Ginny found her favorite big dog Hog again, and rode on his back very proudly, scratching his head from time to time. Hog could only force himself to smile and run back and forth with Ginny. He was extremely obedient now. You know, Ginny is no longer the naughty child before, but the goddaughter of adults. Didn't you see Anduin looking at him with a kind look? He played with the Weasley family for a while. Although Ginny's reluctant eyes made Anduin very reluctant, he still took Hog away from the burrow. But Hog was finally free. In the next few days, he did not continue his research work, but relaxed a little. At the same time, he sent a letter to Karkaroff, asking him to pay attention to and collect news about Fenrir and the Silver Spear. After relaxing in the last few days of the holiday, Anduin released the research pressure accumulated before, and then came the new enrollment season. This year's Hogwarts is a little different from previous years. First of all, he will take the OWL exam this year, and the results of these exams will determine which 7th year new courses he is eligible to take in the future. If the score of a certain OWL exam meets the minimum requirement of the teacher at the time, the student can continue to take the new course of this course. If the score does not meet the requirement, they cannot directly take the new course and can only continue to study the OWL course until they pass the exam. If a student is eligible to take a new course, but thinks that he does not need to obtain the new certificate for this course, then he can also choose not to continue to take this course. At the same time, since the OWL exam will also determine what kind of work they can do in the future, the 5th year students will also have an interview with the dean of the college and receive career guidance. So after passing the 5th year OWL exam, if he does not plan to continue his studies, he is actually half graduated. In the following 6th and 7th years, he will have more free time. Of course, if he wants to get more new certificates, he will become even busier. Secondly, Anduin has received the appointment letter and badge of the prefect from Hogwarts. Next, he will have to assume the responsibilities of the prefect and be responsible for the rectification and management of Slytherin College. As for his future plans, he thought that he would first spend 1 to 3 years helping to reorganize the academy, which was what he had promised Snape. At the same time, he would make progress in the research of magic lathes during these 2 years, and it would be best if he could officially open his alchemy workshop before graduation, so that he would have a stable source of income to support future research. Chapter 252. The Prefect's Carriage, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. As for the new certificate, he didn't really care about it. He would probably take a few symbolic exams. If his alchemy business was particularly good, or if his plans changed, he might graduate directly without taking the exam. After all, the new certificate was more important for job hunting, but he didn't plan to work for others after graduation. He wanted to do business and research on his own. After graduation, Anduin would definitely go to the interior of Europe. There were still many Death Eaters hiding there. For these secret enemies, he always adhered to the principle of cutting the grass and eradicating them. Moreover, compared to doing business, it would be faster and easier to grab resources directly from others. Death Eaters were simply the best target, and it would not violate the law. Most of these guys were born as pure blood nobles, and they must be rich. At the same time, the werewolf wizard Fenring, who was at large, would occasionally keep him awake at night. Insomnia could cause sudden death. For such a guy who indirectly endangered his life by affecting his sleep, he must not let him go. He has always been concerned about the Longbottom's illness. When he travels abroad, he can also take the opportunity to collect some information on mind magic to see if he can find a cure. After solving all the problems, he may be able to enjoy life. But now is not the time to indulge in fantasy. Anduin, who arrived at King's Cross Station again, glanced at the appointment letter of prefect in his hand. It requires the prefects of each college to meet in a specific prefect carriage after arriving at the Hogwarts Express and receive instructions from the male and female student union presidents. The prefect carriage is at the front of the train. Anduin has noticed in previous years that the door is locked and no one can break in. Only after showing the prefect badge will the magic door open. I didn't expect that one day I would be able to enjoy this privilege. Anduin smiled self-deprecatingly and then walked into the special carriage. After entering the prefect carriage, he found that it was not like other carriages, which were completely composed of compartments, but a large open space and 4 compartments. The large open space is a small open conference room with a rectangular table, 2 chairs in the front, and 2 rows of seats on both sides of the table. It is not very big, but it does not seem crowded. The other part is 4 large compartments. Judging from the decoration outside the door, they should be allocated by college. The internal space is much larger than the compartments in other carriages. Each compartment can easily accommodate at least 8 to 10 people. There is a row of circular seats in the compartment, just like a round private room in a KTV, equipped with exquisite velvet seats, and blankets are laid flat on them for warmth. There is a round table with gorgeous carvings in the middle, and it is also decorated with brightly colored carpets and curtains. There are also wine cabinets and snack cabinets next to the seats. Of course, the wine cabinets are filled with some non-alcoholic drinks. Each college in Hogwarts will select a 5th year boy and a girl to serve as class leaders, and they will serve in this position until graduation. Therefore, in theory, each college will have 6 prefects at the same time, and the whole school has 24. If the prefect does not serve as the student union president, there will be only 2 more prefects, and most of the time the prefects are not satisfied. After all, some 7th-year prefects will go out of school early for internships or apply for early graduation. So such a large carriage can only accommodate 26 people. Even if it is divided into 2 parts, it still seems quite spacious. Although Anduin arrived at the station very early, there was already a boy waiting in the conference room. This person sat at the top of the conference room and seemed to be the student union president this year. Anduin found that he also knew this person. It was Merlin Macmillan from the 7th year Badger College. He joined the Magic Club 2 years ago, and the two are familiar with each other. Anduin, you came really early. I'm so happy to see you become a prefect. Merlin smiled brightly at Anduin and greeted him very enthusiastically. Aren't you here earlier? I didn't have time to congratulate you, student union president. Anduin laughed and joked. Don't make fun of me. If I were in the same grade as you, I wouldn't be the president. I came so early because I was afraid that I wouldn't fulfill my duties as president. Marin was a pure student of Badger College, giving people a sense of honesty and reliability. After that, Anduin sat at the conference table and chatted with Marin. As time went by, more prefects entered the carriage. These prefects were obviously more self-disciplined than other young wizards, and they were all here before the departure time. Then Anduin found that most of these prefects were acquaintances, most of whom joined the Magic Club, and they all nodded and greeted Anduin very politely when they saw him. He also saw Charles become the 5th-year prefect of Lion College, and that Ravensslaw, Oriana, also became the prefect of Eagle College. After these prefects entered the carriage, they also consciously came to the conference table in front. Everyone. Marin, who was sitting at the head of the conference table, interrupted everyone's greetings with a smile and drew their attention to himself. Please take your seats as soon as possible. The first short meeting before school starts will begin soon. I'm Merlin Macmillan, this year's president of the Boys Student Union and the 7th grade male class leader of Badger College. You should all know me, so I'll make it short. Marin spoke briefly and efficiently and got to the point quickly. Let me first congratulate my colleagues who have just become new prefects, and at the same time explain our daily work to everyone. Marin opened a notebook in front of him and said aloud, first of all, after the Hogwarts Express starts, all prefects must patrol the corridors of the train. 2 prefects will be in charge every half hour, and then they will take turns. Secondly, after arriving at the college, the prefects of Slytherin and Gryffindor must find your dean as soon as possible and obtain the password to enter the common room from him. Then, after the dinner, lead the freshmen back to the common room. Everyone, pay attention to some slow-moving freshmen and be careful not to let them fall behind. Remember the little lion of Gryffindor last year? He was almost lost. When the old prefects heard Marin's joke, they couldn't help but chuckle. Apparently, this incident was quite famous among the prefects last year. Then it's the night patrol. I will announce this year's patrol routes and schedule at the first prefect meeting in the academy. The meeting will be at 8 a.m. tomorrow in the branch waiting room, which is close to the auditorium and won't delay everyone's breakfast. Marin pointed to a place on the notebook and read. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 253 I Know UL, ask for monthly ticket recommendation. Also remember to write a college work report every month and submit it to the student union. Also, accompany the deans of each college to the regular management meetings in the faculty lounge. If a dean is absent, remember to convey your information after the meeting. I remember that Dean Snape was often absent, so Slytherin College may have to pay more attention to it. Although our work seems busy, as prefects, there are still many benefits. For example, there is a bathroom on the 6th floor that serves prefects and Quidditch team captains. It is located at the 4th door to the left of the statue of Boris the Confused. Obviously Marin was very familiar with prefect affairs and had considered all aspects carefully. After listening to the arrangements, the other prefects nodded in agreement. By the way, Marin couldn't help but glance at Anduin at this time. Slytherin's 2 7th-year prefects this year, Wilkes and Gelly, have both chosen to graduate early, so Anduin understood what Marin meant as soon as he heard it. Wilkes and Kelly were pure-blood wizards before, and they had been protected by Anduin for 2 years. Now they are probably afraid of hearing that Anduin is going to become a prefect, so they chose to run away early. However, in this way, there are only 4 prefects left in Slytherin College. Suddenly, 2 people are missing, which will be inconvenient for both the college management and the student union. In addition to Anduin, the other prefects are 2 6th-year students, pure-blood male prefect Louis Alderton, half-blood female prefect Wendy Dart, and 5th-year female prefect, half-blood wizard Jenny Moria. They have no intersection with Anduin in the past. Louis and Wendy are prefects in the 5th year, but the relationship between the two is very ordinary, which is mainly due to the internal division of Slytherin. Louis was a relatively easygoing type among pure-blood wizards, and he had never provoked Anduin. However, due to the confrontation within the academy the year before, he now had some natural estrangement towards the 3 prefects who were half-bloods and muggles. It's okay, Marion. Anduin smiled indifferently. Although Slytherin has lost 2 prefects, it won't affect the work of the student union. This conversation should have been said by Louis or Wendy, who were in the 6th grade, but Anduin took over the conversation very naturally, and the 2 6th-year students had no objection to it. Louis had heard about Anduin from those pure-blood wizards and knew how powerful he was. Wendy herself had a gentle personality and would not have any objection to Anduin's interruption. That's good. Marion glanced at Anduin, and then glanced at the other Slytherins. As the student president, he actually knew some of the internal situation of Slytherin. With the current internal atmosphere of the Serpentine Academy, he was actually very afraid that something would happen. But now that Anduin has become a prefect, he feels relieved. Outsiders may not know this, but as he has also joined the Magic Club, he is quite clear about this senior in the club. In addition to being a battle hero awarded by the Ministry of Magic, he is also a celebrity in the Magic Club and even in the academic circle of the entire wizarding world. The many new spells developed by this junior have been sought after by many masters, including Professor Flitwick, and have frequently left their names in various academics. Marion even knows that at the latest Cairo International Alchemy Conference, Anduin's work, the Echolocation Mirror, was nominated for the International Alchemy Conference Pioneering Contribution Gold Award. However, this award focuses more on outstanding personal contributions. Anduin's nominated work was co-signed with Professor Bones, so he did not win the award in the end. But he knows that Anduin's ability is more than this. He has other alchemical props that have not been announced. If he is willing, Marion believes that Anduin will be famous at the Alchemy Conference in the next few years. With him here, Slytherin should be fine. Although he is quite confident in Anduin, seeing the other Slytherin prefects ignoring each other, Marion is a little entangled. Okay, that's all for this meeting. If you want to hold an internal meeting, please go back to your own compartments. I have also put the train patrol schedule in the rooms of each college. Remember to patrol in order. Marion explained the precautions clearly and quickly ended the meeting. As the meeting ended, the prefects of each college began to return to the prefect's room in an orderly manner, including Anduin. However, because there were too few prefects in Slytherin, the rest compartment seemed a little empty. After sitting down in the college compartment, Wendy, the 6th-year female prefect, and Jenny, the 5th-year female prefect, gathered together and whispered to each other. It was obvious that they had a better relationship. Louis sat aside awkwardly. He was not familiar with the 2 female prefects at all, and he didn't dare to talk to Anduin. Since the election of prefects in the 5th grade, Louis and Wendy have not spoken to each other except for necessary work exchanges. As for the arrangements of the student union, they don't care at all, they just play it down. Anyway, there are so many problems in the college, and they can't solve them. In the past, there were senior prefects to support them. As a result, who would have thought that at the beginning of the new school year, Slytherin's prefects were directly reduced by 2 people, and the 2 of them became the biggest ones. The 2 who were used to playing it down actually decided to give up when they saw this mess. And just when the 3 prefects were numbly dazed, Anduin spoke. You 3 come over here, I have some work to arrange with you. Anduin took out a recording board from his arms and ordered expressionlessly. Huh. The other 3 prefects looked at each other in confusion. Louis and Wendy were even more confused. What was going on? Why is the newly promoted prefect so arrogant now, talking to the senior prefects like this right away? Didn't you hear? Anduin glanced at a few people impatiently. Are you talking to us? Wendy, as the 6th grade prefect, was still somewhat confident, and she was not as afraid of Anduin as Louis was. We don't seem to be familiar with you, and we don't know each other. Although you were a famous combat hero, you are still a junior who has just been promoted to prefect. Wendy Dart, a 6th grader, half-blood. Her mother is a half-blood witch, and her father is a pure blood wizard. She is currently the head of the Goblin Liaison Office of the Ministry of Magic. Her best subject: biology. Her second best subjects: charms and potions. She only passed the OWL exams in these 3 subjects that year. Her hobby: studying beauty potions. She is currently a couple with Nordrum from Ravenslaw College. Am I right? Anduin looked at the recording board in his hand to confirm again, and looked at Wendy again. I know you very well. Chapter 254 Thinking Trap, asking for monthly recommendation votes. You. Wendy's face suddenly changed when she heard Anduin's words, and she became more and more frightened. How do you know all this? It was not pleasant to have someone reveal her private information in public, especially when she had a deeply hidden emotional life. Wendy stared at Anduin with an angry look on her face. Anduin did not answer Wendy directly, but turned to look at the other 2, and read the words on the recording board. Louis Illerton, a 6th-year student, a pure blood. The ancestors of your family are the 3 Illerton brothers who founded the Sweep Broom Company. Your parents, as direct descendants of Barnaby Illerton, own part of the shares of the Sweep Broom Company. The best subjects: astronomy, transfiguration. The second best subjects: charms, arithmancy. The above subjects have passed the OWL exam. Hobby: Quidditch, but due to your average level, you were not selected for the Quidditch team. For a 6th-year student, you're pretty good. Anduin commented quite pertinently. At the same time, he did not care about Louis' ugly expression, and turned his head to look at the last 5th-year female class leader, Jenny Moria, a 5th-year student, half-blood. Her mother is a Muggle, and her father is a pure blood wizard. She is currently serving in the Muggle Issues Mediation Committee of the Department of Magical Accidents and Disasters of the Ministry of Magic. Her best subjects: charms, Muggle studies. Second best subjects: ancient runes, potions, transfiguration. These subjects have a good chance of passing the OWL exam. Hobbies: she almost only likes reading, and perhaps because of the influence of her parents, she has a strong interest in Muggles. From an academic point of view alone, you are the most outstanding in the same grade, and Professor Flitwick also mentioned you to me. You will be invited to join the Charms Club this year. Anduin looked at Jenny and smiled. This female class leader was the witch who liked to study the most among the ones he had followed. Jenny, who was named, did not show any embarrassment like the other 2. Instead, she blushed shyly and lowered her head. It was unknown whether it was because of Anduin's praise or because she heard that she was invited to join the magic club. What do you want to do by investigating us so clearly? Louis felt a little uneasy when he saw that the other party could tell everyone's details so easily as if they were the back of his hand. These are just some basic situations, not very clear. More in-depth magic value tests, physical tests, and stress tests have not been done yet. Anduin shook his head helplessly. After all, he had been involved for a short time and could not spend too much time on these people, so the intelligence he collected was not very detailed. We're asking you what you want, not questioning whether you know clearly. Wendy had unknowingly been in the same position and the same camp as Louis, questioning Anduin together. You don't need to worry about what I want to do. You just need to know that from now on, you must obey my arrangements and follow my instructions. I'm a person who pays great attention to execution and efficiency. Anduin swept his sharp eyes over the 3 people in front of him, taking in their expressions. Why? Because you were a war hero. But that was a year ago, and you were investigating other people's privacy at will. Don't you think it's too much? Wendy was very angry after her love affair was exposed by Anduin, and she directly said coldly, "Yes, we are all class leaders, and we are 1 year older than you. Why should we listen to you?" Louis was very dissatisfied with Anduin's attitude, and then he followed Wendy to refute. Jenny on the side bowed her head and clasped her fingers without saying a word. As an ad, she didn't know how to socialize, so she didn't join the argument. You still know that you are the prefect? Anduin raised his head and looked at the 2 of them coldly. I would like to know, as a prefect, what duties have you fulfilled? Wendy, apart from dragging a group of sisters to study beauty potions every day, you are also flirting with Nordrum in school, and taking advantage of the student union's arrangements to have trysts with couples during night patrols. Moreover, the secret love affair that you regard as a treasure is almost known to everyone in the Slytherin girl group. Do you want to know who leaked the secret? It was your stupid owl. Every time you sent a love letter back, you would mistakenly put it in the dormitory next door. Your classmates next door were afraid that you would be embarrassed, so they would secretly put it back to your room every time. Moreover, your love letters are almost never sealed. By the time you see the love letter, it has been circulated among all the girls in the college. What? Wendy was numb on the spot after hearing Anduin's words. She felt stiff all over. She had thought that Anduin's revealing her little secret today would make her a social demise on the spot, but she didn't expect that she had actually been a social demise in front of the whole school for a long time, and only she didn't know it. As for you, Louis. Anduin glanced at the male prefect next to him with a cold look. Every day, apart from playing with the celestial model in the astronomy tower, you run to the Quidditch players of the college to show off your family's experimental version of the 6-star flying broom, but unfortunately your flying skills are so poor that even if the captain of the Quidditch team gives you a back door, you can't even get a substitute player. And every time it's time for night patrol, you just slack off and run to the astronomy tower to look at the stars. Wendy's failure to fulfill her duties as a prefect can be said to be due to love, but what about you? You simply don't take the work of a prefect seriously, you are just lazy. Anduin scolded 2 seniors in the same college who were 1 year higher than him. Louis, whose weakness was exposed by him, blushed and argued loudly. What do you know? You don't know the situation of Slytherin College at all. Do you think I want this? In Slytherin College, let's talk about last year. Let's not talk about us. The senior class leaders didn't care about anything. The dean was often absent. We're just newly promoted class leaders and can't make decisions. And the students in the college don't care at all and don't listen to the class leaders. Everyone only cares about themselves. Even if we do our duty, what can we change? Instead of wasting time on them, we might as well do more of our own things. Louis shouted angrily with red face. Obviously, he was extremely disappointed with the current Slytherin. This is also the idea of most Slytherin students, and in this relatively selfish college, such thoughts are easy to resonate. That is, just take care of yourself, why bother about other people's lives, and these class leaders seem to have fallen into such a thinking trap. Chapter 255. Fear, asking for monthly recommendation votes. So, this is your excuse for being lazy, slacking off, and being irresponsible. Anduin was not interested in Louis's words at all. In his eyes, these were all sophistry. Because his teammates didn't work hard, he had a reason to desert. This was a rogue soldier. A deserter. In that case, you are not worthy of continuing to be prefects. From today on, Slytherin College will be taken over by me. Everyone must listen to me and no objections will be accepted. Anduin said expressionlessly, his voice was word by word, as if he was a machine without any emotion. You want to change the entire college by yourself? I advise you not to be too naive. When I was a prefect, I did think about making the college revitalize, but even senior sister Vanessa couldn't do it, right? And the mysterious man period left too many contradictions for our college, which could not be solved at all. Louis seemed to have sensed Anduin's purpose and immediately poured cold water on him. Shaking the morale of the army and not having a strong will, if you were my soldier, you would have to lie on the ground now. Anduin's sharp eyes suddenly hit Louis. Louis, who was suddenly stared at by Anduin, suddenly felt his hair stand on end. He felt a strong murderous aura floating around him, and he was trembling all over. It seems that you are used to losing, and you have even become numb to losing. It's a waste of my words to reason with you. Anduin closed his eyes after saying this. After brewing for a while, he suddenly opened his eyes again. As his eyes opened, a wave of magic power slowly spread out with him as the center. The 3 people sitting opposite Anduin now felt that the world in their eyes seemed to have suddenly darkened, and their bodies were as cold as winter. They were shrouded in an indescribable fear. Facing Anduin was like facing the thing they feared most. Wendy and Jenny's teeth trembled involuntarily, and Louis' face turned pale, and cold sweat began to seep out of his forehead and back. I say, you do it, understand? Anduin's voice was as creepy as the whisper of a ghost. The 3 people who were staring at him almost didn't hesitate and quickly nodded in agreement, as if they would fall into an endless abyss if they were a little later. Sure enough, it was more effective to use fear spell directly. Anduin curled his lips speechlessly. If he had known this earlier, why would he have said anything? After thinking about it, he calmed down his magic power, and the 3 people in front of him breathed a sigh of relief. Next, follow my orders. Anduin put away the recording board and opened his notebook. After arriving at the school, Louis, you go to the dean to get the password for the common room. Wendy, you're responsible for recording the names of all Slytherin freshmen during the sorting ceremony, and quickly assigning dormitories, and then handing the list to me. Before the end of the opening ceremony, Wendy and Jenny will return to the common room in advance and clear the seats in the hall. They can be moved to the corridor leading to the dormitories, just blocking the intersection. After the opening ceremony, Louis will lead all the students to return to the common room as soon as possible, and then maintain order. Don't let them run around. All gather in the common room. I have something to say. In the management of the college in the future, I have only one requirement, that is, you must carry out my orders without any discounts. You don't need to worry about other things. At the same time, this also needs to be implemented among all students. Anyone who disobeys orders should record their names and hand them to me. Do you understand? Anduin's speech was not fast, and his tone was not emotional. Understood, understood. Wendy has not yet fully recovered from her previous fear, and replied in a trembling voice. Answers should be clear and concise. If you understand, you understand. If you don't understand, you don't understand. Everyone, answer at once. Do you understand? Anduin shouted coldly. I understand. The three people were trembling with Anduin's scolding, and hurriedly answered loudly. Anduin nodded slightly satisfied, and then saw Louis's expression of wanting to say something but not knowing, and immediately asked, What's the matter? If you have something to say, just say it. Be clear and concise. It's like this. If you arrange it this way, will there be any problem with the dean? Louis swallowed his saliva, his voice was a little nervous. He now knew why those purebloods were so afraid of Anduin. Why do you think I want to take the position of prefect? Do you think I have nothing to do and like to take care of these trivial things in the academy? Anduin hinted with a sneer. Hearing Anduin say this, the three of them realized that this was all the dean's intention. I promised the dean that I must bring back the college cup this year. Since I promised, I will definitely do it. During this period, whoever dares to stand in my way will bear the consequences. Anduin looked at the few people with a serious face. The three people present saw Anduin's previous methods, and they didn't think he was joking, and they nodded in agreement. At this time, the door of their compartment was knocked. It was Marin who came to inform them that it was Slytherin's turn to patrol the carriage. After hearing the voice outside the room, the three people looked at Anduin involuntarily. After getting Anduin's permission, Louis and Jenny dared to walk out of the carriage. In the next few hours of the train, in addition to patrolling, Anduin explained the subsequent work requirements and management system to the three people. He knew that if he wanted to carry things out, he must first unify his thoughts, and then supplement it with strict management. After communicating with Anduin and understanding some of the measures he was going to implement, the three people also knew that this teenager, who had never had much contact with him before, was going to play for real this time. After listening to Anduin's management method, the three people felt a chill on their backs, but they didn't dare to say anything against it. They could only smile bitterly, because according to Anduin's methods, regardless of whether they were prefects or not, even a few of them were included. Soon, the Hogwarts Express for the new school year arrived. After entering the castle, several prefects quickly got busy according to Anduin's arrangements, while he himself went to the auditorium leisurely as if nothing had happened. This year's opening ceremony was no different from the past, but after the sorting ceremony began, it was obvious that there were many more new students than in previous years. There were already many new students last year, but this year there are more than last year. Professor McGonagall still presided over the sorting ceremony for the new school year diligently. Anduin also saw Charlie, who was about to went to school, in the crowd, but in addition to him, another female freshman attracted Anduin's attention. Nymphadora Tonks. With Professor McGonagall's loud shout, a girl sat on the sorting chair on the podium. Chapter 256 Public Lounge, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. The girl had long, rare light blue hair, sharp features, and lively eyes. What surprised Anduin was that after the sorting hat announced that she was sorted into Hufflepuff, Tonks' hair suddenly turned yellow, which symbolizes Hufflepuff. This also shocked all the young wizards in the hall, and Tonks seemed to be aware of the surprised eyes of others. Then she shook her hair and the hair color turned light pink again. What's going on? Anduin asked Vivian beside him curiously. In the academy, she was more useful than gossip newspapers. Whenever Anduin wanted to find out the big and small news in the wizarding world, he would ask Vivian. She is a natural metamorphosis magus, who can change her appearance freely. This is even rarer than animagus. Vivian heard Anduin's question and immediately became energetic and introduced him. Moreover, compared to her special abilities, her mother's experience is even more legendary. Vivian raised her eyebrows at Anduin with a hint of mystery. The meaning was obvious. If you want to know, come and ask me. Hectares, I'll teach you a lesson when we get back to the common room. Anduin glanced at Vivian speechlessly, then asked to satisfy her desire, is there anything special about her mother? Compared with her background, what about her abilities? Hectares, the story of Tunks' mother is very famous. Her name is Anduin Tunks. She was originally a member of the Black family. She is a sister of Bellatrix, the captured Death Eater, and a cousin of Cyrus, who betrayed the Potter family. The most famous thing about her is that after graduating from Hogwarts, she married the Muggle-born wizard Ted Tunks, and was subsequently expelled from the Black family. Since then, the Black family has been ashamed of her. But I don't think it's a big deal. Isn't it natural to pursue love? As for her abilities, I only know that it seems to be innate to her. Vivian narrated the story of the Tunks family to Anduin in a few words. So that's the case. Then she is Cyrus' niece. But what about her disguise magus? Is it a kind of magic that can be practiced, or is she the only one who is special and has the corresponding rune? I really want to study it. Anduin was not very interested in the mess of these pure-blood families. Instead, he was more curious about the ability to change his face at will. Judging from Tunks' behavior, she should have a lively personality. Maybe I can find time to get in touch with her. Although the atmosphere in the hall became a lot noisier because of this episode, the sorting ceremony was completed in an orderly manner under the control of Professor McGonagall, and entered the dinner. Not long after the dinner started, Wendy came to Anduin and handed him a parchment with names written on it. It seemed that under Anduin's emphasis, she completed the arrangement work very efficiently. What is this? Vivian on the side took out the lamb chop that had been stretched into her mouth and asked curiously. Nothing, just the list of freshmen. I'm the prefect now, don't you know? Anduin said speechlessly as he looked at Vivian, who was greasy. But aren't you the fifth-year prefect? Why would Wendy, the sixth-year prefect, come to give you information? Vivian's mind was quite quick, and she quickly realized something was wrong. Hilly. Anduin glanced at her with interest. Guess. TSK, stingy. Vivian pouted and turned her head away in dissatisfaction, continuing to finish the lamb chops in her hand, not realizing what was waiting for her next. Anduin turned his head carelessly to look at Wendy and Jenny at the long table. After receiving his signal, the two quickly stood up and left the venue. Snape, who was sitting in the teacher's seat, also noticed this scene, which made him curious. He really wanted to know whether it was effective for him to make Anduin the prefect. Unfortunately, in the next week, he was sent by Dumbledore to find the traces of the Death Eaters. Thinking of this, Snape couldn't help but glance at the calm and composed white-bearded headmaster with resentment. As time passed, the dinner came to an end. Louis stood up and greeted the students at the sliding table and led them to the common room. Anduin followed behind to make sure no one was left behind. At this time, the little wizards of the Snake Academy were divided into small circles of familiarity, chatting happily, especially the freshmen, who were all excited. It was not until they entered the common room that these little wizards realized that something was wrong. When they passed through the narrow passage and entered the main hall of the dungeon, they found that the sofas and chairs in the lounge were all gone, leaving only an empty rock meeting place, and even the carpet on the ground was rolled up and taken away. When they completely entered the stone hall, they found that all the furniture had been taken away and led to the corridors on both sides leading to the boys' and girls' dormitories. What's going on? A senior wizard looked at Louis in surprise. Why did you block the dormitory passage? Aren't people allowed to sleep? This. Louis didn't know how to answer, because Anduin didn't tell him what to do in advance, he just gave orders and asked them to execute. Are you all here? We're going to have a college meeting next. Everyone should line up according to grade, with a distance of 1 arm span between front, back, left, and right. Louis, Wendy, and Jenny, please organize quickly. Time is limited. Anduin put his wand against his throat and cast a loud spell that was deafening in the closed room. Everyone was startled by the voice and froze in place for a while, then stared blankly at Anduin standing at the top of the entrance stairs. Even Rosia, Velen, and Vivian looked at him at a loss. They didn't understand why this low-key fighting hero suddenly stood up and gave instructions to several prefects in an imperative tone. In fact, everyone now saw clearly that Anduin was wearing a prefect badge on his chest. Especially the freshmen who had just gone through the sorting ceremony, they were all curious, is this some special ceremony inside the academy? But seeing the confused look in the eyes of the senior wizards next to them, they felt that it was not the case. Even more terrified were the former pure-blood wizards in the 6th and 7th grades. They secretly complained in their hearts, "What is this evil star going to do? Is he finally going to kill us? We are obviously paying protection fees honestly every month." Seeing the confused look of everyone, Anduin frowned. "What are you still hesitating about? Hurry up, you can't even line up. Do you need someone to teach you?" Chapter 257 Academy Meeting. I asking for monthly recommendation votes. Yes, today that class leader will hold a meeting in the academy. Everyone hurry up and line up. Yes, line up. Louis clapped his hands and tried to organize. However, he himself didn't really know what lining up meant, and because he had never organized any activities, his speech was weak and seemed extremely weak. But the young wizards around him still understood what it meant at this time. "But you call this a meeting? Is it necessary to block all the intersections?" This made them a little panicked. However, under the command of the 3 class leaders, they still moved lazily. Among them, it was the senior pure-blood wizards who reacted the fastest. Anduin rarely had contact with other students, so other people were not sensitive to Anduin's orders. But Anduin has been like a sword hanging over their head in the past 2 years, making them frightened all the time, so they moved much faster than others. And friends like Vivian and Velen who are familiar with him, although they don't know what he is going to do, are also very cooperative. Anduin looked at the people who were dawdling and knew that he had to command them personally. The 3 prefects were completely inexperienced and lacked courage, and even the lower grade students were like coaxing children. "Now everyone listen to my command. Take my right hand side as the benchmark, the edge is the 1st grade, and go to the left in order from the lowest grade to the highest grade, facing me from the lowest height to the highest vertically. I will only give you 20 seconds. If you are not standing up after the time is up, you will bear the consequences." 20, 19, Anduin lowered the volume of some loud spells considering that they were indoors, but he quietly cast a little fear spell while speaking, so his speech, although not as loud as at the beginning, gave people an inexplicable sense of oppression. Coupled with the countdown, some young wizards who felt puzzled or indifferent in their hearts could not help but get nervous. But they were used to being casual and alone, and the sudden collective action made them at a loss for a while, and then like a vegetable market, everyone crowded together to move. Some young wizards could not find that team of their grade and foolishly turned around in place. Anduin looked at the noisy scene and nodded. This was the right way. He didn't worry about them getting nervous or making mistakes, as they could be trained slowly later. He was just worried about them being numb and unwilling to act. The simplest formation actually contained the simplest truth, which could easily observe their sense of purpose and motivation. So Anduin just looked at the group of little wizards in front of him, sweating profusely in an effort to find their own cue, and huddled together. However, he still didn't give any direct orders, but secretly slowed down the countdown so that they could experience the feeling of acting on their own and finding their own goals. When the countdown was finally over, all the wizards finally formed a complete queue, but it was crooked, with different spacing and heights, which was very uncomfortable to see. In addition, many little wizards stupidly stood in the wrong queue. You two are standing in the wrong queue. You are 3rd graders, why are you running to the 4th grade queue? And you two, you are 2nd graders, why are you squeezed into the 1st grade queue? Anduin looked at the queues and began to call the roll one by one, calling the students who did not belong to the corresponding queue back to the corresponding queue, and adjusted the formation according to height. It took half a minute to make the queue more orderly. Finally, Anduin looked around at everyone present. In their eyes, he could see confusion, curiosity, fear, tension and other emotions, but the numbness and confusion had disappeared a lot. Anduin nodded with a little satisfaction, then took out the recording board and shouted loudly, "Now, from senior to junior, start calling the roll. Those whose names are called will be called." Viram Higgs. Viram was stunned when he heard the words, and then he immediately reacted. He had been training under Anduin for a long time and was used to obeying Anduin's orders, so he instinctively shouted loudly, "Here." With Velen cooperating as an example, the subsequent roll calls also became the same. Although the other young wizards were occasionally slow to react when they heard Anduin's call, the progress was still smooth. The series of operations performed by Anduin was nothing more than queuing and calling a roll. He did not talk about any nutritious topics at all, but these behaviors, although simple, were very important for shadowing links. Even if it was a response, it was not a trivial matter. It was related to a habit of getting along between the two parties in the future. It could also create a sense of boundaries and cultivate their sense of obedience. With the sense of obedience as the foundation, it is conducive to the formulation of rules and regulations, and then it is easier to cultivate discipline. Moreover, the time of being called out itself also gave them some time to calm down. These young wizards were obviously less nervous after answering. Very good, all the members of Slytherin College are here, so let's officially start today's college meeting. Anduin put the recording board and the pen in his hand together, put his hands behind his back, stood straight, and scanned the crowd with sharp eyes. I know that everyone has a lot of puzzles and confusions in their hearts. I don't know why such a scene was set up today, and they are also curious about what I am going to do. So please keep quiet and I will answer them one by one. Anduin's words made the young wizards present feel a lot more at ease. At least they felt less nervous and fearful in their hearts. Then they quietly stared at the solemn-looking young wizard at the head of the steps. First of all, since there are many new students, let me introduce myself to everyone. Anduin glanced at the row of ages on the right. I'm a 5th-year student, Anduin Wilson. This year, I was appointed as the prefect by the order of the dean and the principal. At the same time, I know that in the eyes of many people, there are many strange nicknames, such as the Ghost of the Serpentine Court, the Fighting Hero of the Ministry of Magic, etc. But I hope that in the next time, you'll just call me Prefect Wilson or Prefect. I'm not familiar with most of you here. I can even say that I am a stranger. Although I have been with most of you for a long time, I have never said a word to you. Many people don't even know my full name. But these are not important, because in the days when I will be the prefect, you will face me often. Then, it is the main part of today's college meeting. Anduin looked around at everyone with a blank expression again. Do you know why I arranged this special meeting today, and why I became the prefect of Slytherin? Chapter 258 Academy Meeting, Part 2 Seeking Monthly Recommendation Votes. The question raised by Anduin made everyone in the audience look at each other in bewilderment. What does it have to do with us why you're the prefect? Besides, you were a combat hero, so it is completely reasonable for you to be appointed as the prefect. As for why you locked us up here for this crappy meeting, who knows what you are thinking? Because, Anduin looked at everyone with a colder look. Because you were just a bunch of trash. Wow. Everyone was in an uproar, whispering to each other. They thought Anduin had something to say, but he just started to attack everyone. His speech even stunned Louis and other prefects. They didn't understand what the other party was going to do. Silence. Anduin said with a cold tone and a word blessed by fear. As he was intimidated, everyone present shut up in shock. Am I wrong to say that you are trash? Take a good look at yourselves. How can you be worthy at Slytherin? You are all like the Walking Dead. Oh, if it weren't for you, who never disappoint others, how could Dean Snape let me waste my precious time on you? Anduin sneered and said sarcastically without mercy. You, how can you say that? How were we not worthy at Slytherin? A pure-blood wizard with a more flamboyant personality said angrily. Oh? You are Jody Farley, a 4th-year student. Anduin raised his hand holding the clipboard and took a look. You don't seem convinced? Then tell me, what have you given for Slytherin House, and what have you done for yourself? Anduin shifted his gaze to Jody and said without pause, last year alone, you received 3 detentions for fighting with Gryffindor, and the house was deducted 55 points. And you failed 4 subjects in the final exam. With your current progress, I even doubt whether you will pass any OWL exams next year. To be honest, I should apologize to you. You're indeed not a waste. You are worse than a waste. Jody Farley, who was named by Anduin, blushed with anger, but could not find any excuse or reason to refute. Jody is indeed unworthy at Slytherin. These pure-blood wizards tried to suppress other half-blood wizards 2 years ago. They are useless. But you just need to point your spearhead at these pure-blood wizards. Why are you talking about us? Have we lost points for the academy? A wizard next to him glanced at Jody coldly, and then refuted Anduin somewhat impolitely. 5th year Jim Ferry. Anduin glanced at the record board again and smiled at Jim. It can be seen that you don't like these pure-blood wizards very much. What else can they do except make trouble every day? Don't forget how they treated us 2 years ago. Anduin, you're a muggle-born wizard. Don't you hate them? If you ask me, now is the time to settle accounts with them. Jim Ferry glared at Jody again, still a little unsatisfied. As soon as Jim said this, the faces of the other pure-blood wizards around him suddenly changed. This Jim was indeed bullied by them a few years ago. Is he really going to be targeted now? In comparison, Anduin seemed to have a better relationship with those half-blood wizards. Thinking of this, many pure-blood wizards began to tremble, because they knew Anduin's methods, so they were even more desperate. Liquidate them. Wouldn't that be another purity committee? Anduin sneered and shook his head. Although you haven't lost points for the academy, it still can't change the fact that you are a waste. What do you mean? Jim felt something was wrong when he heard Anduin's words, and looked at him angrily. Jim Ferrier, you didn't lose points for violating school rules in the past year, and your academic performance was pretty good. Among them, your performance in potions was among the best. Anduin looked at the data on the record board and nodded, and Jim also raised his head with some pride. But, Anduin looked up and glanced at the other person coldly. Although you didn't lose points for the college, you also didn't think of adding any points for the college. The only time you got extra points was when Dean Snape gave you extra points out of favoritism. If that were all, then you could be considered to have no sense of collective honor. But in addition to not paying attention to honor, you even wanted to secretly plot against students in the same college. At the Easter dinner, you secretly put castor royal laxative in the drink of the 6th-year pure blood wizard Leo Malcolm because he had broken a music box during a dormitory inspection in the 3rd year. Another time, several Slytherin students encountered a prank by Gryffindor students. Just when they were about to fight back, you secretly reported it to Filch, which eventually led to the arrest of 2 Slytherin students. The reason is that one of the pure blood wizard students, in order to protect another half-blood wizard student from being hit by the dung bomb thrown by Gryffindor, dragged the other student to the dead corner of the corridor, but was blocked by Filch. As a result, both of them were punished with detention. The pure blood wizard who protected the students in the same house was indeed the Joey Hickman you looked down upon. You? How did you know? Hearing that Anduin had just made his secret public, Jim Ferrier's voice trembled with surprise, and his face turned pale instantly. What? It's you. No wonder I had diarrhea for so long after Easter. I thought there was something wrong with the school food. I was wondering why Filch came so coincidentally. So this is how we were caught. Are you crazy? Why are you targeting your own people? When Leo and Joey heard that it was someone from the same house who had harmed them, their faces turned red with anger and they glared at Jim. Jim also lowered his head indifferently, no longer as confident as before. Do you want me to continue? Anduin looked around coldly, looking past Jim. If you want me to continue, it will only make you look like a waste. Arrogant, mean, stupid, indifferent, lazy, vain, mutual hatred, selfish, no sense of honor. This is what I see in you. Maybe you think that relying on these, you can prove that you are worthy at Slytherin, humph. Anduin spared no effort to sneer at everyone. But this time, under his sarcasm, the little snakes present lowered their heads in silence, because they knew that what Anduin said was true, although the words were heavy and excessive, but they were powerless to refute. Chapter 259 Academy Meeting, Part 3 Seeking Monthly Recommendation Votes. So, I became the prefect of Slytherin, so I specially convened this meeting today. I think it is necessary to seriously and solemnly solve the problems within the Academy. Anduin returned to his expressionless state and looked at everyone solemnly. What kind of academy should Slytherin be? Anduin's voice seemed to be magical, firm and powerful. Look at the classmates next to you. Do you still want to continue to treat them as your enemies? Add insult to injury and treat them coldly? Are you willing to continue to be so muddy, like a pool of mud? With Anduin's breathtaking voice, the wizards in the stone hall couldn't help but raise their heads and look around. At this time, they realized that these classmates who had been in the same academy for many years didn't understand them at all. And now in their eyes, they can see an unknown anger, an inexplicable, exciting thing. Answer me, are you still willing to be a waste like mud? Anduin's cold voice echoed in the crowd again. The students present looked at each other, with a desire in their hearts encouraging them to speak out, but they were a little hesitant. They were afraid that they would still be disappointed as before. Answer me. Anduin spoke again, but this time his voice was more powerful, giving them more courage. Velen, who was standing in the corner, was angry at this time and was about to speak out in response, but he didn't expect that someone else next to him would speak faster. I don't want to. Jodie Farley, the pure blood wizard who had been causing trouble outside, shouted with red eyes in the face of Anduin's questioning. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to. Following Jodie's lead, the other little wizards around him also shouted loudly. And one louder than the other, until finally everyone raised their fists and shouted rhythmically I don't want to. The continuous shouting allowed them to vent the long-suppressed anger and brought courage to everyone around them. Even the 3 prefects who were assigned by him to maintain order joined in excitedly. Looking at the waves of voices from the crowd, Anduin nodded silently in his heart, and Jodie's reaction also made him look at him with a new look. Very good. Anduin stretched out his hand and pressed, and everyone in the venue slowly quieted down following his command. It seems that you are not hopeless. Although you are just a pile of mud now, it is not impossible for mud to sublimate. You must remember, we are Slytherin. Anduin scanned the crowd with a deep gaze. We were born in the mud, we desire power, we are full of ambition, we are strong and calm, we are elegant and self-sustaining, we never regret. Glory belongs to Slytherin. 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 The crowd that had just quieted down shouted slogans again, and their voices were even crisper than before. Anduin's speech was not as resounding as before, but it made everyone present more excited and crazy. They didn't know how long they hadn't tasted the taste of glory. Even Vivian, who was becoming more and more Buddhist, and Ibrahimovic, who was relatively introverted and shy, now blushed and echoed this loudly. Morale was not bad. This was Anduin's evaluation of the reaction of the audience, and then he waved his hand again to signal everyone to be quiet, but the young wizards in the venue were too excited and continued to cheer for a long time before stopping. It seems that you have made up your mind to change. Anduin looked around with a questioning look. The young wizards in the audience were still in a relatively excited state at this time, nodding to Anduin. That's good. Anduin nodded, and then changed the subject, but it's useless to just shout slogans. Next, we must take effective actions to truly change. And if you want to change, you have to listen to me, or should I say, you must listen to me. What I say next, you must complete it without compromise, otherwise don't blame me for being rude. Anduin's voice became extremely cold again. No problem, tell me what we should do. As long as you can do what you say, I'm willing to follow your arrangements. The people whose confidence was just aroused by Anduin were not scared by him. Instead, they instinctively chose to trust and obey, so they all agreed. Okay. Anduin nodded, then stretched out his hand to summon a blank curtain, which slowly unfolded on the steps. If you want to really change, you must first be determined to achieve 2 goals. The first is this year's College Cup, but this is just a simple secondary goal. The second is that everyone's average score must be above E. This is the key point, and in order for you to achieve these 2 goals, I will do whatever it takes. Anduin's sharp eyes swept across everyone's faces, and even made many young wizards twitch their cheeks in discomfort. Listening to the 2 goals mentioned by Anduin, the Slytherin snakes couldn't help but feel nervous. Is winning the College Cup just a secondary goal? You know, they have been used to being the 3rd child for many years. Just think about it and you know that this is not an easy task. And the second goal is even more daunting, all members above E. Are you sure you're not kidding? That means all subjects have achieved good grades or above. Are you sure you didn't mean that, or above? Even in the current Slytherin house, few people can do that. Anduin ignored the hesitant looks of the crowd and continued, to achieve this goal, you must implement 3 parts. You must be mentally prepared. I will not show mercy to anyone who violates it. First, I have re-established the internal organizational structure of the college and the corresponding standards. Second, I will issue relevant disciplinary rules. Everyone must strictly abide by them. Violators will be punished. Third, Slytherin College will implement the 2 meetings and 1 exam system. Everyone must strictly implement it. As Anduin spoke, 3 lines of large characters, organizational structure, disciplinary rules, and 2 meetings and 1 exam, suddenly appeared on the huge curtain. The audience looked at what Anduin showed and fell into confusion for a while. How come they could understand every word he said, but couldn't understand it at all when they were put together? Next, I will explain each item in detail, starting with the organizational structure. Anduin pointed casually, and the words organizational structure on the screen grew larger. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 260 Academy Meeting, for asking for monthly recommendation tickets. The first purpose of establishing a new organizational structure is to facilitate management, and the second is to help everyone ensure that academic performance can improve steadily. First of all, I will assign a grade leader to each of the 7 grades in the college. This leader will form the college committee with me and 3 other class leaders. Of course, class leaders may also be appointed as group leaders. These group leaders will assist us in managing the grade and will be mainly responsible for life. In the future, if there are conflicts and disputes, meeting organization, discipline management and other issues within the grade, I will hold the group leaders accountable for any mistakes. Students of the same grade can go to the group leader to solve any problems first. If the group leader can't handle it, they can come to me. Therefore, the grade group leaders must perform their duties conscientiously and must ensure fairness, justice and openness. I will directly appoint the first group leader. If there is a problem, I will remove him and re-elect him. The little wizards in the audience heard Anduin's explanation and slowly understood what he meant. The so-called group leader is to assist in resolving internal disputes. This is a good thing. After all, conflicts often arise due to poor communication within the college, so they expressed their approval of this system. I will now call the roll. Those whose names are called, please step out and stand at the front of the queue. They are your grade leaders this year. 7th grade leader, Viram Hicks. When Viram heard Anduin's roll call, he immediately stepped out and stood at the front of the queue. He was not a coward and was willing to take responsibility. When the other wizards of the same grade saw this candidate, most of them were satisfied. After all, Viram had a good character and had a good relationship with most wizards. However, some pure blood wizards were a little unhappy. Isn't this just pushing out those who have a good relationship? It seems that Slytherin will become Anduin's one-man show in the future, but they dare not express their dissatisfaction. After all, everyone knows that Anduin's strength is no joke. 6th grade prefect, Wendy Dart. Although you were a prefect, you still have to focus your work on the grade. Wendy nodded when she heard this. Anduin had already made advance arrangements on the train, so she stood at the front of the queue. 5th year prefect, Jenny Moriah. You're in the same situation as Wendy, but you have to learn to take responsibility. Another half-blood wizard. Some pure blood wizards present suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. Why did they choose either a good relationship or a half-blood wizard? Are we really going to exclude pure blood wizards? However, just as they were thinking about it, Anduin read out a name that was beyond their expectations. 4th year prefect, Jody Hickman. What? The first one who felt incredible was Jody. He looked up at Anduin in surprise, wondering if he had read the name wrong. Although you have caused trouble for the academy, you are not without merit. At least you are still loyal. I hope that change can start from yourself. Take the lead, take good care of your classmates, and improve your grades. Don't make trouble again. I will keep an eye on you. Anduin stared at Jody and warned him seriously. Yes, Chief. Jody found that he was actually trusted. He was immediately excited and his face flushed. He couldn't help but respond. Anduin nodded and ignored him, continuing to appoint the other team leaders. 3rd year team leader, Ibrahimovic. 2nd year team leader, Susanna Sisko. 1st year team leader. Anduin glanced at the list of freshmen, sad decided, I haven't observed the freshmen yet, but I'm choosing you as the team leader. If you don't do your job well, I will choose someone else. The freshman named Sata nodded excitedly, and at the same time felt a sense of pressure in her heart. When she looked back at the classmates behind her, she found that everyone gave her encouraging eyes, which greatly boosted her confidence. The above is the appointment of the group leaders of each grade, but you must remember that this is temporary. If you do not do well, you may be removed at any time. At the same time, I hope that when your group leader is performing his work, you will fully cooperate with him and not let other grades look down on you. If you ignore your group leader, I will personally take action. I don't think you will want to see this scene. At the scene, both the selected group leaders and the other young wizards felt a little fresh and uneasy at this time. They didn't know what such arrangements and changes would bring to them. Okay, next I will explain the second part of the organizational structure to everyone, the department representative. Anduin ignored the psychological changes of the young wizards and continued. Department representative. And? The young wizards who were still muttering about the group leader in their hearts were suddenly interrupted by the new words thrown by Anduin. The grade leader is only responsible for your life and discipline management, while the subject representative is responsible for your study. The so-called subject representative is to select a wizard with excellent grades from each class to guide your study of the corresponding subject. Hogwarts has 7 main courses and 5 elective courses, so 12 subject representatives will be selected to ensure that there is one person for each course and there is no overlap. They are equivalent to the second teacher in your college. If you encounter any problems in learning, you can go to the subject representative to ask questions, and for students who have difficulties in the corresponding subjects, I will arrange for the subject representative to give you extra lessons. At the same time, every night in the future, there will be a self-study time in that common room of the college. The subject representative needs to tutor students' homework and assignments during this time. After listening to Anduin's explanation, everyone suddenly realized that this was what the so-called subject representative meant, but at the same time they thought of another problem. The common room became a self-study room at night, so what should we do if we want to play? But Anduin obviously didn't care about their little thoughts and continued to explain on the stage. Since the subject representatives have to maintain a high level in the corresponding subjects, I will only appoint 5th and 6th grade wizards. I will try not to choose 7th grade wizards for this position. After all, you need to prepare for the final exam, and I won't put too much pressure on you. However, there may be conflicts with the positions of other grade leaders and class leaders. Everyone should be mentally prepared. Next, I will start to announce the subject representatives for each course. Herbal subject representative, Wendy Dart. It's difficult for you to hold 3 positions at the same time, but this is also a trust in you. Come on. When Wendy heard Anduin's appointment, she nodded seriously. It seems that she will not have much time to study beauty potions this year. Maybe even her time for love will be occupied by them. Chapter 261 Academy Meeting, V asking for monthly votes and recommendation tickets. Transfiguration Representative, Leo Malkin, your transfiguration has always been good, I remember it's good. Anduin laughed. Leo's face twitched when his name was called. He knew what Anduin was talking about. He had attacked him at Christmas 2 years ago and was beaten up by Anduin. He didn't expect that he would be reused. Potions Representative, Randall Rosier. The appointment of 2 pure blood wizards in succession made everyone look at Anduin with new eyes, but Rosier, who was called, just nodded indifferently. Everyone else didn't know that he had actually been Anduin's man for a long time. Charms Representative, Viram Higgs, although I don't want to choose a 7th year student, and I know you are going to sprint for the new certificate this year, but this course is too important, and I think teaching is another way to review, I believe you can do it. Viram nodded seriously, he didn't care much about it. Astronomy Representative, Lou Holton. History of Magic Representative, Vivian Bulstrode. What? Vivian was stunned when she heard Anduin's appointment. How could I be a class representative? With my level, can I be a class representative? Vivian, to be honest, no one in the whole academy is better than you in the History of Magic course, and you were too lazy. Now you must take responsibility. At the same time, your other courses are a bit weak. In addition to tutoring classmates in the History of Magic, you must also work hard in other subjects. I will not make an exception for you this year, remember. Anduin said earnestly. Vivian was so upset when she heard this. Why is it so difficult to be an insignificant person? Muggle Studies Subject Representative, Jenny Moria. Magical Biology Subject Representative, 6th Year Student Esther Lund Divination Subject Representative, 6th Year Student Sophia's Arithmetic Divination Subject Representative, Louis Oladun. No one in the academy is more proficient in this course, so you have to be the subject representative of both courses at the same time, but fortunately this is just an elective course, so your pressure will not be too great. Louis nodded when he heard this. He counted the students in the academy who took this course, and he felt a little confident. Finally, Anduin raised his head and looked at everyone. Defense against the Dark Arts and Ancient Runes Subject Representative, I will personally guide everyone in these 2 courses. In this way, a total of 10 subject representatives were selected for the 12 courses, plus 7 group leaders, of which 3 were overlapped as subject representatives and group leaders, including Anduin. A total of 14 people, all stood in front of the queue. As Anduin called out their names one by one, all their names appeared on the big curtain, which also made the other young wizards present remember these people. Then Anduin motioned the representatives to stand aside and continued the rest of the process. The above is the arrangement of the organizational structure of the college. Next, I will explain the content of the second part to everyone, which is to establish a strict code of discipline. He waved his hand casually, and the names on the screen shrank to the corner like a slide, and the words Code of Discipline appeared in the center of the screen. From today on, everyone must strictly abide by the Slytherin Code of Discipline, which is divided into 3 principles and 4 rules. The 3 principles are: 1. All actions must be under command. 2. To maintain the honor of Slytherin College is one's own responsibility. 3. Correct attitude, unity and friendship, and mutual respect. The 4 rules are: 1. Attendance discipline, 2. Housekeeping discipline, 3. Daily discipline, 4. Reward and punishment system. The little wizards in the audience had never seen this before. Seeing Anduin quickly laid out so many rules, they were dazzled. From today on, your every word and action will represent Slytherin and safeguard the honor of the Academy, starting with abiding by the rules and regulations. I believe you can understand the three major principles with your intelligence, and I will explain the details to you next. The so-called attendance discipline means that you must be punctual for all future classes, meetings, and self-study. You must not be late or leave early. One act of laziness will trigger a chain reaction, so I am very strict on this point. And the housekeeping discipline means that everyone has corresponding standards in the dormitory, dress, and meals. First of all, in the dormitory, all beds, tables, floors, clothes and hats must be kept clean and tidy. The house elves will wash your dirty clothes for you, but the beds and tables must at least be kept flat. At least I didn't ask you to pile up like tofu blocks, Anduin muttered secretly in his heart. As for clothing, everyone must wear the school uniform during non-break time, and keep it neat and tidy without wrinkles. The collar must be folded in half and turned outward, and the shirt must not be turned out. Except in summer, the first button of the shirt, the discipline button, must not be unbuttoned, the sleeves must not be rolled up, the tie must not be worn diagonally, and the school badge must be worn. During meals, food must not be wasted, and food must not be used to play around. Loud noises are prohibited in the auditorium, and the table must be kept clean. Daily discipline is for non-class time. You must not violate school rules without reason, especially if you are caught by professors or Filch. At the same time, you must observe daily etiquette. You must nod and greet school staff, including Filch, Hagrid, and Mrs. Pincer. When walking, you must hold your head high and chest high, walk in rows of 2 or 3, and are prohibited from running around at will. Anduin read out various discipline rules expressionlessly. After listening to the discipline introduced by Anduin, the young wizards looked at each other in bewilderment. This was too strict. If they followed his requirements, most of the people present would hardly meet the regulations. Finally, I will add internal grade scores in the college, with each grade having a full score of 100. We will implement a reward and punishment system. If you perform well, you will get extra points for the college and receive rewards. But if you are deducted points, no matter whether it is college points or grade points, Anduin sneered, looking at the audience in a teasing manner, then you will have to accept the corresponding punishment. Don't worry, I won't ask you to copy books or clean toilets. I promise you won't want to try it, Hilly. Anduin's creepy sneer startled everyone, and many people couldn't help swallowing their saliva. Then Anduin stretched out his hand and suddenly a large stack of pamphlets appeared in his hand. Then as he waved his wand, these pamphlets scattered and floated to the people in the audience, accurately letting each person have a copy in their hands. This is the college manual I compiled. It records all the details in detail. You must strictly abide by it. I will keep an eye on you all the time. Anduin warned again in a creepy low voice. Chapter 262 Academy Meeting 6 Asking for monthly recommendation votes. After receiving the booklet, the young wizards flicked through it and found that the content was even more detailed than what Anduin said, and almost stipulated every aspect of their food, clothing, housing and transportation. Isn't this a bit too strict? I can understand being punctual and not getting deducted points, but according to the rules, you can't talk while eating, and you have to pay attention to how many students are around you when you walk. Louis, as a prefect, felt that these discipline requirements were a bit too harsh and couldn't help asking. That's how strict it is. You are not ordinary people. You are Slytherins. Anduin's voice suddenly rose. You are Slytherins who regard honor as everything and victory as the most important. If you just do a little better than others and simply win a house cup, what's the point? What I want is for you to become real Slytherins, Slytherins who can remain elegant and calm and easily win, and, Anduin stretched out his right hand, then slowly clenched his fist. What I want is to win in all aspects without dead ends. Listening to Anduin's breathtaking speech, the little wizards who looked at him at this time, first felt not the excitement before, but the fear that made their souls tremble. Is this Slytherin? He can do anything to himself to the extreme? At this moment, they truly felt Anduin's naked ambition, the will that was colder than winter. Louis, who asked the question, swallowed his throat, and after a moment of stiffness, he realized that his bag was already wet with sweat. Now he didn't dare to talk anymore, so he had to lower his head silently. So the rules, disciplines, and requirements I set for you can no longer be rejected from the moment you step into the common room. There is no such nonsense as becoming a dragon or a worm here. You must win, and you must win according to my standards. Anduin saw that everyone was a little nervous because of his words, so he calmed down and restored his clear tone and said, "Let's get back to the topic." After talking about the organizational structure and discipline, the next step is 2 meetings and 1 exam. The so-called 2 meetings of the weekly meeting and the monthly meeting. The weekly meeting is scheduled to start at 7 p.m. every Saturday night. Everyone must attend on time. Attendance will be strictly checked and no leave will be accepted. The monthly meeting will start at 7 p.m. on the Sunday of the last week of each month and will be held together with the weekly meeting of that week. Leave is also not allowed. During these 2 meetings, I will summarize everyone's deductions and learning progress this week and this month. At the regular meeting, I will punish those who violate the discipline and reward those who perform well and have made great progress in their grades. As for the so-called 1 test, there will be a monthly test in all subjects. The test time is the day before the monthly meeting, which is the Saturday of that week. The test time is the whole day. Then we will announce the results at the monthly meeting on the next day. You can do poorly at the beginning, but I will not accept setbacks. At the same time, those who cannot keep up with the progress will be deprived of all the rest of the week in time for make-up lessons. When Anduin finished explaining the so-called 2 meetings and 1 test, the crowd in front of him suddenly burst into wailing. The previous requirements were already strict enough, and now they have to deprive them of their weekends. How can they survive? Silence. Anduin shouted sternly. After everyone around him quieted down, he smiled coldly. "I forgot to tell you that tomorrow, Sunday, there will be a test in the academy. Everyone must wear the academy uniform to participate. At the same time, I will check everyone's dormitories and personal clothing tomorrow. Follow the standards. I'll give you 1 night to pack up." Now these little wizards didn't even whine. They all looked at Anduin with sad faces, but after a short period of contact before, no one dared to disobey him, so they had to make bitter faces. "What? Look at your expressions. Are you ready to surrender before it even starts?" Anduin's sharp eyes swept across everyone. Stirred by his words, this group of little wizards couldn't help but feel rebellious again, but no one shouted slogans this time. Some wizards even made up their minds quietly and prepared to use their strength to make everyone look good. "Don't worry, I'm here, you can't surrender. Remember, keep your ambition and shrewd mind, and the will to win first." Okay, that's all for this meeting. Grade leaders and department representatives stay, and the rest of you can disband. As soon as Anduin finished speaking, a wave of magic surged all over his body, and the pile of chairs blocking the door of the dormitory floated out under his control, quietly hovering above everyone's head. Seeing this scene, the young wizards who had been relaxed because of the disbandment suddenly raised their heads in surprise, and were shocked by the strength displayed by Anduin. "What are you still standing there for?" Anduin snorted coldly, scolding the stunned people, and then dispersed the crowd. After all the young wizards dispersed, Anduin slowly put down the furniture, and then looked at the waiting people. "Come around, there are things you need to do." Now these college committee members are very honest and come to the front very well. There are 2 things to do next. First, the layout of the common room needs to be changed. These sofas and coffee tables are not conducive to study and meetings. You will find 2 empty dungeons to arrange the seats. I have prepared some long tables and chairs for meetings and self-study in the future. Vivian, if you are willing, you can put your mahjong and other chess and card tables in a separate room. Don't play mahjong in the hall in the future. You can play in the room if you want to play in your spare time on weekends, but that must be when your grades can keep up. Anduin did not propose to ban entertainment directly. Okay, but I guess I won't have so much time to play cards in the future. Vivian has been immersed in the nightmare of being required to get a grade above E. She knows that Anduin is a man who keeps his word, so she dare not have a fluke mentality. The second thing is to vacate a few empty dungeons and arrange them as the class committee office. Go and do it now. I have already made the test questions for tomorrow. After they finish the test, the representatives of each subject will come to the office to correct the test papers. I want to know everyone's grades tomorrow night. Okay, I understand. After receiving the order, the department representatives immediately rushed to the dormitory. At this time, Anduin called out to Velen, "Velen, let's talk alone next, it's about the Quidditch team." Chapter 263 Internal Affairs Inspection, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. Quidditch team. If you hadn't mentioned it, I would have thought you had forgotten about it. You didn't mention it all night. When Viren heard about Quidditch, his eyes lit up again. It's mainly because I don't pay much attention to it. I need some professional advice. After all, the performance of Quidditch matches also plays an important role in winning the House Cup. How is our team this year? Anduin knew that since the 7th year Quidditch captain graduated last year, Viren has now taken over the captain's duties. Not bad. As long as you keep enough training, you'll still be very competitive. I promoted your training method in the team last year. Although I didn't learn it completely, at least the physical fitness is no longer the same as before. Viren thought of the current team and said confidently. Does the team have any problems now, such as equipment, venues, and players? By the way, Vivian seems to be in the team too. How is her performance? Anduin suddenly thought of Vivian. He was very curious. How fat is she now? Can she still fly? In terms of equipment, our team is considered good in Hogwarts. After all, last year, Louis sold a few of his 5-star sweeps to the team at a low price in order to participate in the team selection. However, even if the captain gave him special treatment, he still couldn't be selected. Velen shook his head with a smile. As for the team members, there is no problem at the moment, but we need to train new seekers. After all, I will graduate next year. As for Vivian, I have to praise her as a genius. She performed very well, but because her broom is very flexible and she always likes to play extreme operations in the air, she often can't hold the broom down and is thrown away. As a result, in order to increase stability, she actually ate herself into a little fat. Now her flying skills are among the best in the team. Velen talked about Vivian and couldn't help laughing. Anduin glanced at Vivian in the distance with some surprise. Could it be that this girl is so resistant to losing weight because of this, and she doesn't even care about her figure for Quidditch? Then according to what you said, there shouldn't be any problem with Quidditch this year, and I heard that our school did pretty well last year. Yes, we barely got second place last year, but that was mainly because we met Gryffindor in the second game, otherwise we wouldn't have such a result. Velen shook his head and recalled. Why do you say that? It seems that our school beat Gryffindor last year. Anduin hadn't watched a Quidditch game for a long time. Indeed, but after that game, 3 people on our team were injured directly, which resulted in us being unable to train for the next month, and we finally lost to Ravenclaw. Velen sighed and shook his head helplessly. In other words, the main reason that hindered our Quidditch team's score was still the feud with Gryffindor. Anduin frowned and muttered. Yes, in fact, it has eased a lot in the past 2 years, but once on the field, everyone still can't stop being angry, and it is always easy to develop into a full-scale fight. In the end, even if you win, it is easy to cause casualties, and then you'll fail in the subsequent competitions due to injuries and lack of training. Velen was also very distressed about this. Obviously, a normal victory is not a small number, but it always turns into a fight. I understand. Anduin nodded. So, let's make 2 preparations for the next Quidditch game. First, I will go to Gryffindor to discuss. This year, Charles has become the prefect. We can try to communicate and control it to prevent the game from getting out of control. After all, if they fight with us, it will not be good for their subsequent games. Secondly, if I can't reach an agreement with them, then I will personally guide your area of tactics. Since you want to fight, just kill the opponent directly. At the same time, I will prepare enough medicine to ensure that you can recover quickly after the battle. Anduin commanded very calmly. Really? That's great. When Velen heard that Anduin had helped them figure out the way, his confidence increased immediately. If that's the case, I'm sure I can lead the college to win the Quidditch Cup this year. Confidence is a good thing. You go ahead and do your work. I also need to make some preparations. Anduin ended his conversation with Velen, then took out a chair from his space ring and directed everyone to finish arranging the venue. In a short while, the common room was completely new. Looking into the stone hall from the entrance, there were more than a dozen 1.60.8 long tables arranged in an island-like manner, covered with silver and green tablecloths that symbolized the Serpent Academy. Each table was relatively spacious enough to seat 8 to 10 people, which was enough to meet the needs of self-study and meetings for students from the entire college. After arranging all this, Anduin notified all grade leaders to check the dormitories with him tomorrow. The next morning at 7:30, Anduin and a group of prefects knocked on the doors of all dormitories early, and then asked the team leaders to urge all students to stand in front of their dormitories after getting dressed. The dungeon of Slytherin College is quite special. After entering the stone chamber, there are 2 passages on the left and right, leading to the male and female dormitories respectively. There are small rooms symmetrically distributed on the left and right sides of each passage. At this time, These little wizards rubbed their sleepy eyes, stood at attention in front of the door with a little panic, and welcomed the inspection with some trepidation. "Stand up straight, it's already bright outside, why are you still listless?" Anduin's crisp voice echoed in the corridor, driving away the sleepiness of the little wizards. "Stretch out your hands. Look at you. Your fingernails are not trimmed plainly. There is mud inside. Where are your discipline buttons? Why don't you fasten them? Your boots are not shiny enough. Remember to clean them after breakfast. Why are your clothes wrinkled? Use the housework spell to tidy them up. If you don't know how to do it, ask other students. What's wrong with your hair? You are not a Gryffindor lion. You don't need to make it look so fierce. There is also dirt in your eyes. Clean it up quickly. What's the situation in your dormitory? It's okay to put things in a mess, but why are there so many stains on the floor? Are you comfortable living in such a room?" Anduin led a group of team leaders and began to patrol along the dormitory corridor one by one, carefully checking the clothes and appearance of each little wizard, even including the face, hair and fingers. If there is a problem, it will be pointed out immediately, and these little wizards will be ordered to adjust it and show it to the great team leader behind them. After checking the appearance, Anduin would go into the dormitory and point out the deficiencies in housekeeping. At the beginning, he even used magic spells himself to clean the room for the little wizard, and used this as a standard to explain to others. Chapter 264. Baseline Test, asking for monthly ticket recommendation ticket. Although Anduin's explanation of the inspection was very detailed, he was also very efficient. In just over half an hour, he inspected all the male and female dormitories. After completing the inspection, Anduin looked back at the team leaders who had been following him. "Did you see it clearly? This time I will use examples to personally demonstrate to you the housekeeping standards for individuals in dormitories. From tomorrow, except for weekends, every morning at 7:30, the team leaders of each grade will conduct a housekeeping inspection on the students of their grade. Based on the grade, if they meet the standards, they will be taken to the auditorium for meals. If there is one person in the grade who fails to meet the standards, the entire grade cannot leave the common room. Today is the first day, but starting tomorrow, if I find someone outside the common room who does not meet the housekeeping standards, the corresponding grade points will be deducted. As team leaders, you must set an example. If you do not meet the standards, you will be punished twice as much." Anduin had a stern face and loudly instructed the team leaders. His voice was very loud. In addition to explaining to them, he was actually also speaking to the little wizards in the corridor. When establishing such standards, they must be strict and ruthless enough, otherwise it will be difficult for them to form a habit. "Yes, Chief." Since Joey replied to Anduin in this way yesterday, these team leaders also followed suit and addressed him. "Okay, now go to the auditorium for dinner. Students from grades 2 to 7, return to the common room before 9 o'clock to prepare for the baseline test. Velen, after dinner, you'll take the first-year students to familiarize yourself with the castle and identify the locations of classrooms for various subjects and the library." Anduin shouted to everyone. The young wizards who had been standing for half an hour finally relaxed when they heard that they could finally disperse. The first-year students were even more so, because according to Anduin, they didn't have to come back for exams on the weekend, and there were also 7th-year seniors who took them to tour the castle. Suddenly, these young wizards rushed out like doves whose cages were unlocked. "All of you stand still." Anduin looked at the actions of these guys and shouted with an ugly face, "You forgot what I just said yesterday. We're the Snake Academy, not the Fish Academy. 2 people stand in a row and 3 people stand in a line. Who told you to jump around?" Hearing this shout from Anduin, everyone's heart tightened and they quickly gathered together to line up. With so many people moving together, it was like a long snake made up of people, winding forward. Anduin was like an instructor at this time, just following by the side, inspecting the crowd with sharp eyes. "Don't go so fast, the people behind you can't keep up. Look ahead when walking, don't look around, and don't whisper. Be careful to give way to pedestrians at intersections and stair corners. If you can't keep up with the team in front, you can't keep up. Just walk slowly, no one will rush you." As the crowd walked, Anduin carefully reminded them and educated them in practice. The pedestrians they met along the way, whether professors or young wizards from other houses, all looked at this long stream of people with strange eyes. They were all curious about what was wrong with these Slytherins, who were so tense, didn't even talk, and were dressed so neatly on the weekend. The young wizards on the way were embarrassed by being looked at as if they were looking at magical animals, but they didn't dare to lower their heads or speak. Many of them blushed with embarrassment, After arriving at the auditorium, the young wizards of the Serpent House walked around the sliding table for a long time. After everyone stood in front of the table, they sat down to eat at the command of Anduin. Sit and eat. At the same time, during the meal, if anyone laughed and joked, whispered, took food with their hands, or even made too much noise when cutting the plate with utensils, they would receive Anduin's fierce eyes. The strange scene at the table of the Snape House was particularly eye-catching compared to the tables of other colleges, which were sparsely occupied. Even the professors who were eating at the teacher's table could not help but glance over here frequently. Especially the little lions at the table of Gryffindor College were pointing fingers at the Snape House, and there were strange laughs from time to time. Anduin saw all this, and he also saw that the little snakes beside him were a little tangled, but he didn't care in his heart. Embarrassed? When they see the strict discipline of Slytherin in the future, they will be the only ones who will be embarrassed. After breakfast, Louis, who had held the prefect meeting on behalf of the Snape House, also came back. At this time, the Snape House people split into two groups. One followed Anduin back to the common room, and the other was the freshmen, who followed Louis to visit the castle. After returning to the dungeon, the Snape House people sat on the new long chairs, and then quietly looked at Anduin on the steps, waiting for the arrival of the exam. I know that you will feel embarrassed by the strange looks from others just now, Anduin said directly. The young wizards looked at each other in bewilderment, and some nodded in acknowledgement. But you must remember that being different and not caring about other people's opinions is a characteristic of Slytherin. People are born different. The strong do not need to explain to the weak. What you need to do now is to learn how to become strong. Do you understand? Anduin said in a low and gentle voice, smiling slightly. Yes, Chief. The young wizards digested Anduin's word thoughtfully, but responded quickly. Okay, now the test officially begins. We will not do a practical test for the first test. It will all be written tests. Answer the questions carefully. Anduin snapped his fingers, and a stack of test papers, quills and ink suddenly appeared in front of all the young wizards. After a while, the only sound in the stone hall was the tip of the pen scratching the parchment. Anduin stood quietly on the podium to supervise the exams. For each subject, grades 2 to 5 were only given 40 minutes to take the exams. Seniors only had to take the subjects they had passed the OWL exams for, with 1 hour for each subject. The corresponding subject representatives did not need to take the exams. As soon as the time was up, Anduin would cast a spell, and the test papers of the corresponding subjects in front of them would disappear, and then they would continue with the next subject. Including elective courses, each wizard in the middle and lower grades actually only had to take 9 subjects, and senior students had to take 6 subjects at most, and the fewest had to take 3 subjects. At lunchtime, Anduin once again organized everyone to go to the auditorium for lunch, and rest for an hour after lunch, and then continue the exams in the afternoon. The freshmen who came back from visiting the castle were ordered by Anduin to keep quiet, and then quietly return to their dormitories. Chapter 265 Negotiation, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. It was not until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon that all the students' exams were finally over. Then Anduin ordered them to disperse and summoned the subject representatives to the office to mark the papers. In the evening, Anduin finally got the results of the little wizards of Slytherin College. But after seeing the table with the grades marked, he was still a little worried. To be honest, the foundation of these little wizards was not very good. From the perspective of subject grades, 19% of the subjects were below P4, 38% of the subjects were passing, 34% of the subjects reached E good, and only 9% of the subjects reached O excellent, which means that 57% of the subjects were below E, which was simply terrible. From the average score of each little wizard, the performance was seriously differentiated. The senior wizards in grades 6 and 7 all had grades above E good. Of course, those subjects where they did not perform well could not pass the OWL exam. Although they have fewer subjects and account for a relatively small proportion, after removing them, the results of the remaining wizards in grades 2 to 5 look even worse. Among these young wizards, there were less than 20 whose grades were all above a pass, and only 2 whose grades were all above E good. One was Ibrahimovic from the 3rd grade, and the other was Jenny, the class leader. It seems that in terms of grades, the middle and lower grades are the hardest hit. In this case, let's adjust the plan a little. 7th grade wizards have to prepare for the final exam and cannot move. So the 6th grade wizards can only assist the subject representatives in tutoring other little wizards while ensuring their own grades. Then organize study groups according to grade and subject. The courses for grades 1 and 2 are roughly the same, so they can be combined into one group. Grades 3 and 4 are combined into one group. Grade 5 has to prepare for the OWL exam, which is the heaviest task and requires a separate group. Then just equip each subject representative with 2 6th grade deputies as assistant subject representatives. The 3 of them will be responsible for 3 study groups respectively, and those little wizards with poor grades in the corresponding subjects can be covered. Then during self-study in the evening, 7 to 9 o'clock is the ordinary self-study time. This time is mainly for completing homework, self-study and answering questions. From 9 to 11 o'clock, those little wizards with poor grades in the corresponding subjects are allowed to stay and use it as make-up time for the study group. 1 subject is remedial per day. If it is counted as 7 main courses and 2 elective courses, and the weekends are included, there can be 3 rounds a month, just in time for the monthly exam. Anduin stroked his chin, and had already made up his mind about the next arrangements. He then called a meeting of all the subject representatives to convey his decision to everyone. Doesn't that mean I have to join the study group to take extra classes for all subjects except History of Magic? And I have to tutor them in History of Magic, which means I have to stay in class until 11 p.m. every day. No, staying up late will make your skin worse. Vivian looked at Anduin with horror, and even a few tears welled up in her eyes. You still know how to complain, what were you doing before? Anduin rolled his eyes at the pitiful Vivian. As long as your grades in other subjects improve, you won't have to stay after school at night. So your destiny is in your own hands. No longer paying attention to Vivian, Anduin turned his head away. Louis, Wendy, go and invite all the 6th grade wizards over. We need their help in these initiatives. Wendy and Louis nodded, and soon the 6th grade wizards were brought into the office, and Anduin repeated his arrangements to these senior wizards. That's the thing. For everyone's grades, we need your help now. And due to the shortage of manpower, some of you will need to serve as assistant class representatives for 2 or more subjects. Of course, I won't force you in the name of Slytherin. Anduin waved his hand, and a small wooden box appeared beside him. After opening it, rows of potions were placed inside. These are tonic potions. They are not good things, but they are encouragement for you. Class representatives also have them. I will give you 1 bottle for each course you claim to be an assistant class representative. In fact, even if Anduin did not use potions as compensation, these 6th graders would not refuse. They knew that Anduin was doing it for the good of Slytherin. The academy was like a stagnant water before, and now they're happy to contribute to Slytherin. However, after having material rewards, they naturally behaved more actively, so they quickly claimed the tasks issued by Anduin. Seeing this, Anduin nodded with satisfaction, but still had a stern face. I am very happy to see that you are willing to contribute to the college, but I want to remind you that I will not give you a backdoor in discipline because of your active performance this time. Don't worry, this is our own will. We just hope to see the Slytherin flag flying over the auditorium this year. A 6th year wizard said with a smile, and the others nodded in agreement. Okay. Anduin heard the words with a serious face, slowly stood up, and put his right hand on his chest. May the Slytherin flag fly in the air, glory belongs to Slytherin, victory comes first. May the Slytherin flag fly in the air, glory belongs to Slytherin, victory comes first. Everyone present followed Anduin's actions and chanted in unison with the same solemn faces. After confirming the arrangement of self-study and study groups, Anduin announced the disbandment, but stopped Velen again. What's wrong? Is there anything else? Seeing that Anduin hit something to find him again, he was also a little puzzled. What else could it be? Have you forgotten our conversation yesterday? Anduin tidied up the table and chuckled. What do you mean? Velen suddenly thought of something. Is he going to talk to Gryffindor about Quidditch? So soon? I don't like to procrastinate. When Lulu went to the prefect meeting this morning, I asked him to make an appointment with the Gryffindor prefect to talk at the observatory at 8 o'clock tonight. The other party has agreed. Now the time is just right. You are the captain of our Quidditch team, so it's just right for you to go with me. Anduin said as he led Velen out. Is it okay for the 2 of us to go? There shouldn't be any tricks, after all, you know the relationship between the 2 houses. Velen said with some concern. If there is any tricks, it would be great. It is more in line with my thinking to solve the problem in a simple way. But Louis said that he made an appointment with Charles and the 7th year male prefect, and it seems that they're sincere. Anduin smiled and tilted his head. Chapter 266. Anduin in the eyes of the Lion Court, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. When Anduin and Velen were rushing out, Charles was also walking towards the astronomy tower with Pascal Hawke, the 7th-year prefect of Gryffindor. However, Pascal raised his hand to his forehead, sweating, and took a deep breath from time to time along the way. "Charles, what do you think Anduin wants to talk to us about? He is not going to attack me in the dark night." Pascal looked at his companions with a guilty look, and then wiped his sweat. "Prefect, you don't have to be so nervous. Anduin is easy to talk to." Charles shook his head helplessly. "Hey, that's Anduin Wilson. Wouldn't you be nervous if it was someone else?" Pascal felt more and more flustered after saying that name. So why is the 7th-year prefect of Gryffindor so nervous, and even a little afraid to mention the other party's name? That's because Anduin's reputation in Gryffindor College is not as low-key as in the Snape Court. And this is also partly related to Charles, or it is related to both Charles and Bill. You know, Gryffindor is not like Slytherin. There are not so many intrigues in the academy. The little wizards in the Lion Academy are all cheerful and get along very well. It's just that although the academy is united, the ability to cause trouble is indeed too strong, and there is not so much desire for the academy score itself, and more like to do what they want. Charles himself has a good character and a good personality, so he has a good relationship with everyone in the academy and has many friends. Naturally, not long after Charles entered the school, most people in the academy knew that he had a good friend named Anduin in Slytherin, but everyone did not have any prejudice against him because of this. But since Charles trained and studied with Anduin, he gradually became an Anduin braggart. He would brag in the Lion Academy whenever he had something to do, saying how awesome his friend in the Snape Academy was and how strong he was. At first, everyone just listened to it as a joke. How powerful could a junior student who was unknown be? After all, bragging is popular in the Lion Academy, and everyone likes to brag to each other. But things changed 2 years ago. 2 things happened that year. The first was that the second Anduin fan Bill entered the school. This kid almost regarded Anduin as his own big brother. He was as exaggerated as he could be when he praised his big brother. And the most important thing was that Bill himself was very capable and good at studying. Not long after entering the school, he became an excellent student in the school. Even he said so his credibility naturally increased greatly. The second thing was naturally Anduin's feat of independently defeating 5 Death Eaters that year, plus being awarded the title of Battle Hero, plus the feat of fighting 10 people at the awarding banquet. You know, the students of the Lion Academy like to be heroes. Now there is suddenly a real hero in Hogwarts, and his strength has been tested, which has led to many people's strong interest in Anduin. The multiple halos, coupled with the unremitting praise of the 2 Anduin fans in the school, led to a big change in the direction of the Lion Academy. Soon, Anduin became a figure like a sweeping monk in the eyes of many Lion Academy students. He is powerful, low-key, and irreconcilable with evil forces like the Death Eaters. And this prefect Pascal actually knows Anduin better, because he is a person who has obtained the Owl certificate in the care of magical creatures, and has a very good relationship with Professor Kettleburn. Last year, by coincidence, Pascal learned from Professor Kettleburn that Anduin had done another scary thing. He defeated at least 4 werewolves and saved more than a dozen magical animals. He himself is not a person who keeps his mouth shut. This matter soon spread in the academy, and with the addition of Charles and Bill, 2 well-known Anduin fans, the story became more and more bizarre. At first, it was said that 4 werewolves were defeated, and then more and more people came, and finally Anduin killed more than a dozen werewolves alone. In fact, Anduin also knew about this matter. After all, Charles also liked to brag to him. He thought it was quite funny that these guys actually guessed the result correctly by using their imagination. But this led to a leapfrog rise in Anduin's status in Gryffindor, and even many young wizards regarded him as an idol. Charles and Bill, who were known as Anduin's top brothers, also rose in status. One of the reasons why Charles was selected as the prefect so smoothly this year was that with him as their own prefect, wouldn't it be like being protected by the hidden boss of the academy? The reason why no one from the Lion House had bothered Anduin for so many years since he entered school was not only because he was low-key enough, but more because he was too famous in Gryffindor. As for Anduin's selection as the prefect of Slytherin, in the eyes of the Snape House's own people, it was like watching a suspense movie. They didn't know what Anduin wanted to do at first. But for the little lions in Gryffindor, knowing that Anduin became the prefect of the Snape House was like showing a horror movie to someone in the middle of the night. No, shouldn't you be a hermit? I heard from Charles and Bill before that your relationship with those Slytherin students was not good. They have fought with the Serpentine House so many times, and they have never seen Anduin come to intervene. So after seeing Anduin in the prefect's car, except for Charles, the other prefects of the Lion House were just terrified. This was too scary. And this morning, Louis informed them that Anduin would summon him tonight. As a result, Pascal has been filled with anxiety from morning till now. He was nervous before meeting his idol, and panicked about facing the big boss. Why did Anduin choose to meet at night? Could it be that? Would he ignore his heirs and personally deal with Gryffindor? Would he support the little wizards of the Serpentine House and force the Lion House to submit? Thinking of this, Pascal's sweat started to fall again. Charles. Pascal swallowed again. Brother, I've always been kind to you. If Anduin really wants to do something strange, you can't just stand by and watch him die. Prefect, I told you not to be so nervous. Anduin must have something to ask us. Although Charles said this to Pascal, he felt a little uncomfortable because of his influence along the way. I'm afraid of something happening. Pascal couldn't help but think of something wrong when he heard Charles' reply. Now, not only his forehead, but also his chest and back began to sweat. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 267. The Lion Academy Prefect who is hard to see through, asking for monthly recommendation tickets. At this moment, Pascal also saw two figures standing quietly in the observatory. Under the bright moonlight, Anduin, who was facing away from the two, was like wearing a layer of silver-white gauze, which gave him a sense of mystery. Pascal looked at this scene, and the feeling of uneasiness in his heart became stronger. This appearance showed that he was not a good person. He couldn't help but secretly look to the left and right, and at the same time mobilized his magic to sense whether there was an ambush. He shook his head with some self-mockery. I am so stupid. How could I have thought that the other party would use such a despicable method? After all, the opponent was Anduin. Pascal didn't bring too many people because he was afraid of misunderstanding. If he angered the other party, he would be finished. In his eyes, Anduin was even less likely to bring people, and he would definitely disdain to do so. Pascal suppressed his panic and calmed down a little. As a Gryffindor prefect, he couldn't show his weakness in front of outsiders, so when he approached Anduin, he put on a serious face. Anduin on the other side actually arrived at the astronomy tower one step earlier than Pascal. He was just lamenting the cooler weather, but he sensed the other party's appearance. After discovering that the 7th-year prefect of the Lion Academy was actually with Charles alone, Anduin nodded secretly in his heart, saying that he had good courage. Then he noticed Pascal's small movements of probing left and right. He was cautious enough, and judging from the fluctuations in the control of magic perception, his strength was stronger than many adult wizards. Should I say that he really deserves to be the prefect of the Lion Academy? Anduin's mouth curled up slightly, and he praised the other party again in his heart. But when he saw Anduin's expression, Pascal's heart skipped a beat. What's wrong with him? Why did he smile after seeing me? Is this trip a fraud? But now that I'm here, there's no chance to regret it. Although Pascal was panicking, he still gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Come on, stick your head out and you'll get a knife. His complicated mood made his facial expression very stiff for a while, giving people the illusion of being solemn and serious. Captain Hawk, Charles, I'm sorry to bother you so late, I'm really busy the rest of the time. Anduin looked at Pascal who was approaching, and was very polite to greet him first. Hello, Captain Wilson, it's nice to meet you, I've heard of your great name for a long time. Pascal just finished this sentence and wanted to find a hole in the ground to crawl into. It was really embarrassing. He was so nervous that he couldn't even speak clearly. At this time, Pascal's embarrassed face became more and more stiff, and he could only stand there like a piece of wood. I haven't heard that the prefect of the Lion Academy is a stutterer, but it doesn't matter. Even though he stutters, he can still remain so calm. His psychological quality is indeed strong. Anduin nodded secretly. This prefect Hawk left a good impression on him. At this time, Pascal felt extremely embarrassed and had no mood to greet. He just wanted to get to the point quickly, so he asked with a stern face, Prefect Wilson, I don't know why you asked me out. Please tell me. Why is he not stuttering now? Anduin was a little confused, but seeing that the other party was so direct, he answered very straightforwardly, there are two main reasons why I am so anxious to find you today. One is about Quidditch, and the other is about the conflict between the two colleges. Sure enough. He is going to take action against the Lion Academy, I knew it. Pascal's heart was beating violently. In his heart, he felt sad about his bleak future, and was angry at Anduin for bullying others by relying on his strong strength. Impossible, we Gryffindor will never disband the Quidditch team because of compromise. You shouldn't just take your anger out on us because of the conflict between the two houses. Pascal said with a little anger on his face and a little grievance in his heart. As soon as Pascal said this, he immediately received 3 question marks on his face. Not only Anduin and Viren, but even Charles next to him looked at him in confusion. Captain Hawk, what did you just say? Who said to disband your Quidditch team? Anduin felt that he could no longer see through this Linehouse prefect. Whether it was his behavior or his words, they were so unexpected. Isn't it? Pascal realized that he seemed to be too excited and said everything he was thinking. However, he was worthy of being an experienced prefect. He quickly put on a straight face and said, I just wanted to show you Gryffindor's determination. Now it's time to get down to business. Really? Why don't I believe it? Anduin glanced at him meaningfully, but did not continue to investigate. He decided to test him a little. You know the situation between our two colleges. Whether it is in the Quidditch field or in daily life, there are always some extraordinary behaviors. I wonder what Prefect Hawk thinks about this. Extraordinary? Isn't this normal? As for what I think, who didn't fight a few times when they were young? Pascal wanted to scratch his head, but he held back for the sake of his image. So you think it's okay even if the conflict between our two sides escalates to a full-scale war? Anduin narrowed his eyes and continued to test. All-out war? Pascal suddenly had an idea. He couldn't start a fight. You know, the current Serpentine College prefect is Anduin, so he quickly replied, that won't do. To put it bluntly, there are just some minor frictions between the wizards of the two colleges. It won't escalate to this extent. In that case, I think the pranks that have escalated to fights, and the daily struggles on the Quidditch field that have escalated to armed fights, are themselves constantly escalating the conflict. If this continues, it is not impossible to start a full-scale war. Seeing that Pascal's attitude was not very tough, Anduin emphasized immediately. At this time, Pascal also reacted a little. He had been immersed in his own imagination before, and the close contact with Anduin caused him to be nervous, so he spoke incoherently. But as the two sides talked, his mood also eased a lot. At this time, from what Anduin said, it seemed that he had some ideas about these fights between the colleges. Then what do you think, Prefect Wilson? Pascal's condition recovered a lot, and his face was finally no longer a stiff dead face. My idea is actually very simple. Anduin smiled and explained to Pascal. Chapter 268. Fight until you are defeated. Ask for monthly ticket recommendation. If the relationship between the two colleges continues to develop like this, we will be the only ones who will suffer in the end, so I think it is necessary for us, the prefects, to intervene. Then how do you think we should intervene? Pascal wanted to start imagining some strange developments at this time, but he suppressed it in the end. In the Quidditch game, we can agree with each other not to use too extreme tactics and behaviors. After all, if the game does not follow the rules, there will be no sense of accomplishment even if we win. And, judging from the results of previous years, when our two teams play to the end, we are the ones who suffer the most. It is not a good experience to miss training due to injuries and then lose in subsequent games. Anduin's conditions are quite sincere. So that's how it is. I thought you were going to directly order our team not to resist. When Pascal heard Anduin's request, he was so happy. It turned out that this was just a small matter that made me nervous. You mean we should persuade those players to use regular tactics in the game? Okay, no problem. Pascal agreed quite straightforwardly. He was afraid that Anduin would go back on his word. Okay, Prefect Hawk, it seems that we can reach a consensus on this point. Anduin didn't expect the other party to agree so quickly. In this case, let's make an agreement here. In the next Quidditch game, we promise not to give priority to malicious fouls. I hope you can do it too. No problem. I'm the captain of the Gryffindor team this year. If we can really play fairly, we will not object. But are you sure you can make your players obey? If they still fight after this agreement, it will be difficult to talk to them next time. Pascal talked about his concerns. Don't worry about this. I'm the captain of the Slytherin team this year. I will make them restrained on the field. Willen said at this time. This kind of agreement requires the presence of the Quidditch team. He came here for this. Okay, we're both on the field, so it will be much easier. Pascal looked at Willan and nodded, which was considered to be a finalization of the agreement. Since the matter of the game has been settled, then it's time to talk about another matter. Anduin saw that the negotiations between the two sides were quite harmonious, and hurriedly followed up. At this time, Pascal also basically understood Anduin's position. It seems that he is not going to take sides, but is more willing to maintain fairness. You are worthy of being the light of justice and the nemesis of evil, Anduin. I actually thought you would do something unruly before. Or am I too young and my understanding of fighting heroes is still not thorough enough, Pascal said in his heart with some shame. Another thing is the daily conflicts between the two colleges. I believe Anduin will not be biased, but it is not easy to solve this matter. Thinking of this, Pascal frowned. You are talking about the conflicts between the colleges, but for us, these little wizards are usually not as easy to manage as Quidditch players. You should also know the situation of our college. It's not that they will definitely listen to me. Pascal told his difficulties truthfully. I understand. Anduin nodded. It is irrational for these little wizards to completely suppress their conflicts, so I thought of a better way. Oh? What way? Pascal raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. The conflict between them is, after all, a conflict between some young wizards. In comparison, most students in the academy don't want to get involved. Anduin said with a smile. Pascal nodded repeatedly after hearing this. He knew that this was indeed the case. Even in the Lion Academy, not everyone was so aggressive. Since it is mainly a conflict between some young wizards, let's find a way to release their conflicts and emotions. Release? Pascal asked. How to release? Pascal asked. Duel. Anduin glanced at him calmly. It is better to relieve them to block. Since there is a conflict, it is not a good thing not to let them resolve it clearly. So if there is a conflict between Gryffindor and Slytherin students in the future, it will all be resolved by dueling, witnessed by senior wizards from both academies, and both sides will only use wands. After the battle, no matter who wins or loses, they are not allowed to harass each other in daily life and study. If you are not convinced, you can apply for a duel again and fight until you are satisfied. Of course, each person can only participate in one duel at most within a week. Anduin said clearly. Oh? Duel? That's a good idea. If the two sides have a grudge or a dispute, they can agree on a time and place to resolve it with a duel. This way, both sides can be convinced. If it's like before, you sneak attack me once, and I sneak prank you again next time, it's endless. Pascal nodded with satisfaction. He was very satisfied with this suggestion. In this case, I suggest that the class leaders organize and supervise the duels in the future, and the venues will be decided by both parties in turn. Anduin was quite satisfied to see Pascal so sensible, but still reminded, the two parties who supervise at the turn must guarantee that the conflict will not escalate, and keep their promises and don't make trouble at ordinary times. Otherwise, I don't mind teaching you what integrity is. Anduin's eyes changed and suddenly became sharp. Don't worry, I'll talk to them when I get back. Pascal replied expressionlessly. At this time, Pascal's heart almost jumped out. You do it yourself. Don't tell us horror stories, but as long as we go back and scare the little lions with what Anduin said, they should be able to obey. Then Anduin and Pascal negotiated for a while about the problem between the two houses, and they parted ways only after reaching a consensus. Pascal was very happy about this. He was finally relieved. It was not a comfortable thing to be stared at by Anduin and chapped. Anduin was also quite satisfied with the result. He didn't expect that the people of Gryffindor were so easy to talk to and quite reasonable, and he was also impressed by Pascal, an unpredictable Lionhouse prefect. I didn't expect it to be so smooth. I was thinking about whether I should fight with them at first. Anduin said to Velen next to him with some amusement. Indeed, but this hawk prefect of the Lionhouse is really neat and tidy, not dragging his feet at all. Velen also nodded in approval. Since the problem of the Lionhouse and Quidditch has been solved, then we can free up our hands to deal with these little snakes. Anduin said with a relaxed mood. Chapter 269 The Disappearing Chief, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. Or do you have a solution? In just 2 days, the state of these young wizards in our school has changed a lot. They seem to be very determined. In addition, if we can handle the relationship with the Lion Academy well, the rest will be easy. Velen saw all the changes in the school. It was the first time he saw these young wizards burst out with such strong vitality. This is just the beginning. Now is not the time to be blindly optimistic. Anduin shook his head at Velen. Habit formation is a very difficult thing. Don't be deceived by these appearances now. The next is a competition of willpower. If your heart is not hard enough and your principles are not firm enough, it won't take long for you to return to your original state. Are you really going to punish them for making some trivial mistakes? Velen looked at Anduin in confusion. In Velen's eyes, the most important thing is the college cup. As long as they can ensure that they are deducted less points and have excellent Quidditch results, they have a good chance of winning. As for the standards and learning goals mentioned by Anduin, in his opinion, they are all pie in the sky drawn by Anduin, which is difficult to achieve. Doing what you say, maintaining integrity and fairness is the core of management. I will not only punish them, but also punish them severely and severely. I cannot make any concessions. Anduin said with a slight smile. But, punishing them for trivial matters will have the opposite effect. You have worked hard to establish your prestige in the academy. I think it is enough to catch a few examples. Velen said hesitantly. On the contrary, if you want to deal with it strictly, you must ensure that everyone is treated equally, otherwise it is easier to cause problems. Velen, in fact, punishment is also a science. The corresponding punishment has the function of maintaining discipline and system. First of all, the punishment should be simple and straightforward. If it takes too long or is too complicated, it will cause negative emotions, affect the mood and make the state worse and worse. Therefore, things like copying books or punishing self-reflection are not advisable. Secondly, when punishing, there should be no insult to personality or dignity, otherwise it is easy to cause disgust, especially in public. As long as the treatment is fair, just and open, there will be no problem. So if you want these little snakes to develop good habits, you have to keep them like a hawk. Of course, this also includes you. You know I am a man who keeps his word. Anduin glanced at Velen again, and then quickly disappeared from the spot. Velen tried to digest Anduin's words, but he was still a little confused. However, Velen still understood the other party's last warning, that is, even if he made a mistake, he would definitely be merciless. After the two returned to the common room, the little wizards had already rested, and now all they had to do was to welcome the formal class. The next day, at 7:30 the morning, there were knocks on the doors of the dormitories of the students who had classes in the morning in the corridor of the Slytherin College dormitory. It was the head of the grade who came to knock on the door. The students who were knocked on the door nervously opened the door of the dormitory, and after looking out for a while, they found that only the head of the grade was there, and Anduin was not there. In comparison, they were actually more afraid of the scary chief. In the face of such a situation, the reactions of these young wizards also changed in various ways. Most of the young wizards were still quite conscious. After all, it was just the second day. They tidied up their own affairs, and then asked the head of the grade to check again. Then they waited honestly at the door, ready to go to the hall for breakfast together after everyone in the grade had finished tidying up. However, some young wizards were not so obedient. When they saw that the chief was not there, they became lax in their hearts, and various situations occurred. Some young wizards stayed in bed, thinking that it was too early to get up, so they turned back to the dormitory and got into bed again. No matter how the head of the grade urged them, it was useless. Some young wizards seemed to have higher emotional intelligence. Some of them had good relations with the grade leaders. They either pulled the leaders to plead for mercy or tried to get close to them, hoping to avoid inspection. After all, in their view, the so-called housekeeping requirements were not a big deal. Even if they violated them, no one would be so serious and stare at them. Moreover, even if they were found out, they would only be criticized a few times. It was nothing big. Among them, Jody Hickman, the fourth grade leader, encountered such a problem. Although he used to be careless, he was friendly and loyal to others, so he was familiar with many people in the same grade. Since he was appointed as the grade leader by Anduin, he felt that he was valued and needed, so he was very determined. However, when he met several friends who pleaded with him, his loyal side was revealed again. Although he said that he was embarrassed, he still let go of a young wizard who wanted to sleep in. There were also two people who thought that the discipline button was too tight on the back of the neck, so they loosened it and covered it with a tie. Although he was discovered by Joey, he chose to turn a blind eye to the two young wizards' insistence. When he came out of the dormitory and came to the stone hall, he did not find Anduin, and he did not know where he went. Seeing that Anduin was not there, a small number of young wizards relaxed a lot and did not line up in a long queue like yesterday. However, senior students like Viren, Wendy and Jenny knew that Anduin's methods were very strong, so they did not dare to relax at all and still strictly supervised the students around them. Or like those first-year students, since they had just entered school, they did not dare to disobey Anduin's orders, and they were very honest. After that, these young wizards found that Anduin was nowhere to be found in the common room, the auditorium, and the corridor of the castle. This was the case in the morning, noon, evening, and even during meals. Even the fifth-year students in the same grade could not find Anduin during class. It was as if he had evaporated from the face of the earth in Hogwarts. Only Velen was secretly alert. He had heard Anduin's warning yesterday, so there must be something wrong with such a situation today, so he restrained his classmates throughout the day. The students of the Serpent Academy quickly finished their study for the day, and it was close to 7 o'clock for evening self-study. However, since Anduin was not seen all day, some young wizards also became lax. After all, they would still be a little slack without anyone supervising them. Although the grade leaders were with them most of the time, not everyone could be seen, and some grade leaders even slacked off themselves. When they encountered minor problems such as talking loudly or grabbing food with their hands while eating, they were let off without being stopped in time. Chapter 270 Attendance, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. As this situation accumulated, the young wizards were more and more absent from class. For example, it was almost time for self-study, and except for the 6th and 7th grades, there were still some young wizards from other grades who were not present. But just at 7 o'clock in the evening, Anduin appeared. And he appeared out of thin air. Everyone was sitting in the hall, chatting with each other, and there were some young wizards who arrived at the last minute. Then they found that a figure suddenly appeared on the stone steps. Many young wizards were startled, and then they immediately shut their mouths, and then winked at the students who were still shouting next to them. The experienced senior wizards immediately recognized that it was an illusion spell. Their chief should have arrived a long time ago, but he had been hiding his figure. Then they felt a little nervous. Since the chief was in an invisible state, it was obvious where he was and what he was doing in the morning. These senior wizards immediately understood it. Then they looked at these junior wizards with pitiful eyes, feeling somewhat relieved, and at the same time looking at Velen and Wendy with gratitude. Many of these senior students were pure-blood wizards, and they were already very afraid of Anduin, so they could be said to be the most honest. Anduin stood still on the stone steps, and then mobilized his magic power to use the barrier spell to form an air wall, blocking the corridor leading to the dormitory and the outside world. The evening self-study officially begins. From now on, everyone who is not here will be considered absent. Anduin's cold voice resounded throughout the hall. The young wizards who had already taken their seats were now trembling at Anduin, who looked unfriendly on the stage. And those young wizards who arrived a step later were blocked by the barrier spell at the entrance of the passage. Now it was like a transparent glass wall, and they could only see and hear the situation in the hall, but could not enter at all. Now, all grade leaders stand up and report attendance. The reporting format is: Grade the 20th, how many people should be present, how many people are present, how many people are absent. Those who are present should call for everyone to be present, and those who are not present should report the names of the absentees. Anduin ignored everyone's nervous and uneasy eyes and spoke to himself. The group leaders below the stage had to stand up with bitter faces, and then hurriedly looked around, and then counted the number of people in their grade in the shortest time. Some group leaders looked calm after standing up, such as Velen and Wendy, but more group leaders looked a little panicked and nervous at this time, because they were short of people. Don't dawdle, report quickly, this is a necessary procedure for every self-study and meeting. Now you don't waste a minute, you are wasting everyone's time. Anduin urged with a stern face, then turned his head to look at Velen. Start from grade 7, report one by one. Yes, grade 7 should have 9 people present, and 9 people are present. Everyone is present. Velen shouted calmly. Okay, please take a seat. Anduin nodded at him, then looked at Wendy. There are 12 students in the 6th grade who should be here, and 12 are here. All are here. Wendy also looked very calm. Anduin also gestured for her to take a seat, then continued to look at the lower grades. There are 15 students in the 5th grade who should be here, and 14 are here. One person is missing, and that's Sybil Rosa. She was just one step away from making it, Jenny explained to Sybil, who was stuck in the passage behind Anduin, but was immediately interrupted by Anduin. Don't make excuses. Being late is being late. If everyone says they are just a little late, then what's the point of being punctual? Keep going. Anduin ignored Jenny's explanation and turned his head to look at Joey from the 4th grade. Joey, the leader of the 4th grade group, was the most nervous at this time, with sweat all over his face. But when he saw Anduin staring at him, he had to bite the bullet and report. There are 14 people in the 4th grade who should be here, but the actual number is 11 people are here, and 3 people are not here, namely Nico Barragan, Akko Rice and Roman Hayward. Joey nervously reported while looking at Anduin anxiously. He was now afraid and anxious. But Anduin on the stage just listened to the report expressionlessly, took a pen and wrote it on the recording board, and then said nothing, and even his expression did not change, just would, and turned his head to look at the next person. There are 17 students in the 3rd grade who should be present, and 17 students are present. All students are present. There are 20 students in the 2nd grade who should be present, and 18 students are present. 2 students are absent. There are 23 students in the 1st grade who should be present, and 22 students are present. 1 student is absent. The absentee is, soon all the grade leaders finished reporting the attendance. Except for the 3rd, 6th and 7th grades, there were students absent from every grade. Moreover, there were only 110 students in Slytherin College, and now there were 6 students who were late. The absentee rate reached 5%, which made Anduin look even uglier. Do you think I'm a joker, or do you think I'm kind? After only disappearing for 1 day, so many people dared to ignore the discipline. You really made yourself proud. Anduin snorted coldly and looked at everyone with a bad tone. The young wizards who were scolded by him were now trembling with fear, including those who were late and were blocked outside the stone hall and in the passage. Everyone, come in and stand on the stone platform. Anduin waved his hand, and the barrier spell at the entrance of the passage was lifted. The 6 young wizards in the entrance and dormitory passage lowered their heads, looking ashamed to face people, and came to his side reluctantly. Is it fun to be late? Or do you think you can show your ability by ignoring the rules I set? It seems that you don't take me seriously at all. Anduin looked at the 6 people with dignity. No, it's not like that. We just forgot the time. A young wizard explained a little nervously. Forgot the time? What a good excuse, but you can look at the remaining 104 people in the audience. Can you explain why they didn't forget the time? This is only the 3rd day of school. Anduin ignored the other party's defense and asked coldly. After being questioned like this, the other young wizards had nothing to say and could only lower their heads in embarrassment. Since you have violated the rules, you must accept the punishment. Let's start with you tonight. Each latecomer must do 30 push-ups on the spot. Anduin said coldly. Push-ups? The people standing on the stage looked at each other in confusion. They didn't understand what Anduin meant by push-ups. It seems that you are not very clear, so let someone demonstrate it to you. From now on, all punishment will be in this way. Anduin looked aside with a stern face. Virene, step out and demonstrate the movements. Chapter 271 Punishment, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. Velen pouted speechlessly. It wasn't me who was being punished, so I had to do it anyway. However, he still walked to the front desk and demonstrated the so-called push-ups to everyone. After watching Velen do a few Weasley, the young wizards on the stage breathed a sigh of relief. It looked like the movements were very simple, and Velen didn't look very tired. Did you see clearly? Remember to do the movements correctly, and your body cannot touch the ground. Listen to my commands later, and I will count to 30 for you. Anduin looked at everyone and shouted, push-ups, ready. Then the 6 people climbed down on the stone platform one after another, waiting for Anduin's command. At this time, the expressions of these people were relatively relaxed. 1. Anduin looked at everyone and read, and then several people followed suit and bent down. 1. He shouted again after the 6 people propped themselves up. But at this time, everyone found something wrong. Why did he shout 2 ones? Did he remember it wrong? It's impossible, it's just the beginning, so they all looked at Anduin with slightly puzzled eyes. Some of you are not up to standard. If no one can reach the standard, I will not continue to shout. Anduin said coldly. The people lying on the ground could only look at each other with a wry smile when they heard Anduin say this. 1. Still not up to standard. 1. 2. Anduin started his punishment. None of the 6 people could pass the first few times. When Anduin finally shouted 10, these people realized how powerful push-ups were. You have to know that they did it one by one. Continuous push-ups can use the power of joint rebound to make themselves less tired, but they paused after each push-up, which made them feel extremely tired. When Anduin shouted 10, they had actually done at least 20 push-ups. Even from the audience, they could clearly see that their hands on the floor were shaking involuntarily, and the sweat on their faces was dripping slowly along the pen tip. 25. 25. 25. 26. As time went by, the exhausted people started to make mistakes again. They were just a little bit away from the end of the punishment, but they kept repeating the same movements. 30. When Anduin finally finished counting, the 6 people on the stage were completely exhausted and could only lie on the ground quietly, panting. Okay, the self-study attendance penalty is over, hurry back to your seats. Anduin urged the few people to get up and return to their seats, and then turned his eyes to the crowd again. The attendance penalty is over, theoretically it should be self-study time, but, your performance today really disappointed me. Anduin looked at the audience sternly. The people in the audience were also frightened by his roar, and then they lowered their heads with a little shame. I wanted to talk about it after the evening study, but there are so many people who violated the rules and regulations today. It seems that I have to take up some of the self-study time in advance to let you know what respect and order are. Let's do it one by one. Anduin took out the record board and glanced at everyone coldly. First, there are violations of internal affairs. Since this morning, some people have violated the rules and walked out of the sliding common room with messy and sloppy appearance. There are second-year student Gare Murray, who was not wearing the house badge, and fourth-year students Roman Hayward and Dante Mulenga, who were not wearing the discipline button. Anduin spoke very quickly about several people whose clothes did not conform to the regulations. Every time he read out a name, the person who was called out would start to shudder. It turned out that he saw everything and did not miss a single person. Those whose names are called, stand up and step out. Under Anduin's short and powerful command, the young wizards who made mistakes stood up one by one with their heads down. Among them, 4th grader Roman Hayward had just been punished to do 30 push-ups for being late. When he heard that he was also punished, his legs almost went limp. And their grade leaders, stand up as well. Anduin shouted. Seeing the leaders who were called stand up one by one, Anduin slowly walked down the steps and walked to their side. Do you know why I called you up? Yes, it's because we didn't check it properly. Jody looked at Anduin who came nearby and answered with a little stammer. Not checked properly? No. Anduin shook his head. I saw your behavior this morning clearly, just like you, Jody. You clearly knew that there was something wrong with their internal affairs, but you didn't make any requests in time. You were maliciously condoning it. Anduin walked to Joey's side, stared at him seriously, and shouted sternly. No, I'm not. I think it's just an ordinary button, and they covered it with their ties, so it's not that serious, and they must know they're wrong. Jody looked at Anduin nervously, and begged for mercy for the 2 classmates beside him. No, they're wrong. It's not that serious. Anduin couldn't help but smile coldly when he heard that the other party dared to quibble. Do you know what your behavior means? But the moment you indulge them, your standards are lowered. If you miss a button today, you can be sloppy tomorrow, and ignore discipline the day after tomorrow. And do you think you were just doing simple housework? Anduin's eyes passed Joey and scanned everyone. Even if you want to change the world, you have to start by tidying up your clothes and making your bed. If you tidy up your room every morning, you will be able to complete the first task of the day. This will give you a sense of accomplishment and motivate you to challenge and complete more tasks. In the end, you will find that the first task you complete will prompt you to accomplish more tasks. This actually reflects a fact, that is, every little thing in life is important. If you can't even do a little thing well, you will definitely not be able to do big things. Joey, do you think you were doing good for them? Wrong. You were hurting them, and you were also hurting yourself. Anduin shouted angrily at Joey and everyone around him. After hearing Anduin's words, both Joey and the little wizards around who violated the discipline lowered their heads in shame. Chief, I was wrong. Joey looked at Anduin in shame, but it's all my fault. If you want to punish me. I'm willing to accept the punishment for Roman and Dante. Chapter 272 Strict Execution, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. Oh? Everyone who violates the rules will be punished by doing 30 push-ups, including you. If you want to take the punishment for them, the total will be 120. Anduin looked at him expressionlessly. I understand. Although there was some fear on Joey's face, his eyes were still firm. No. Rumen and Dante, who were standing next to him, felt guilty because Joey was implicated by them. Now that they saw that he wanted to take the punishment for them, they felt even more guilty and quickly objected. It was because we were lucky that we ignored Joey's inspection. Now we should take the punishment for Joey. The two-faced Anduin raised their heads bravely and shouted. Seeing that the two were so concerned about him, Joey felt even more guilty. At the same time, he saw that Rumen's arms were shaking from the fatigue of doing push-ups, and he opened his mouth to say something. Enough, this is not a street store and diagonally, where you can bargain. Anduin interrupted the three people's rush coldly. He would not relax the standards because of such touching brotherhood. 30 push-ups per person, no excuses, get on stage and get ready now. Anduin shouted at several people. Seeing Anduin being so ruthless, everyone gave up the idea of luck at this time, and had to stand on the podium and lie down, waiting for Anduin's command. 1. 1. 1. 2. It was still strictly enforced like obsessive-compulsive disorder. This scene not only exhausted the little wizards who were punished, but also made the little wizards watching them feel frightened. It was the first time for them to see such an uncompromising execution standard. This persistence and strictness also brought a huge shock to their hearts. Looking at Rumen, who had been punished for being late before, he now looked hideous due to fatigue and exhaustion. Every time he stood up, he let out a roar, and his trembling could be detected with the naked eye. In fact, Anduin had secretly lowered some of the standards at this time, because he knew that with the physical strength of these little wizards, they could not support so many standard push-ups at all. He was just stripped in the first few push-ups. But Anduin still had a stern face, giving people a feeling of ruthlessness. As he finally called 30, these little wizards finally took their last breath, especially Rumen, who had experienced 2 punishments. He could not even climb up at this time, and could only be dragged down the stairs by the shoulders of several people beside him. After the people who were punished returned to their seats and settled down, Anduin continued with a blank expression. Okay, the above is the punishment for those who were not dressed properly. Next is the next item. When Anduin finished the next item, the faces of the little wizards sitting on the seats became even more terrified. It's not over yet? Really, one by one? Everyone was frantically recalling their behavior today, fearing that they would be caught. Especially those who had been punished before. They had seen Rumen's miserable state, and now they were waiting for Anduin's roll call, just like waiting for the end of the world. Dining etiquette is not standard. 3rd grader, Cliff Palmer, loud noise during lunch. 2nd grader, Julie Taymor, grabbing food with hands during dinner. As Anduin read out the names one by one, the little wizards who were called could only stand up with sad faces. They really didn't expect that someone would stare at them while they were just eating. When Anduin read out the last name, everyone in the hall couldn't help but gasp. 4th grader, Rumen Haywood, threw food around during dinner, and wasted more than half of the food. At this time, everyone couldn't help but look at Rumen, and he stood up with tears in his eyes, looking at Anduin with a bleak face. This was the 3rd time. The punishment just now seemed to have cost him his life. Now it hurts to lift his arm. Seeing Lumen being pointed out again, Jody couldn't help it. After all, it was because he didn't strictly abide by the discipline that Lumen was lax. He still felt guilty, so he stood up and shouted, "Chief, call for report if there's anything." "Who allowed you to stand up?" Anduin looked at him fiercely. Seeing this, Jody had to sit down honestly and shouted, "Report. Speak." Anduin looked at him coldly with his hands behind his back. "Chief, Lumen's body really can't stand another punishment like this. I think he knows he's wrong. Please let him go this time." At this time, both Jody and Lumen looked at Anduin with a pleading expression. "Oh? Lumen, you really know you're wrong?" Anduin glanced at Lumen with interest. "Yes, Chief, I won't dare to do it again." Lumen nodded like pounding garlic at this time, looking at him pitifully. "So what do you think? Are you willing to exempt him from punishment this time?" Anduin looked around and asked everyone. "He really looks like he can't bear it. Chief, why don't you let him go this time? I think he must have learned his lesson. Please forgive him this time." The other young wizards around saw Rumen's miserable state and persuaded him, including those who were also standing and waiting for punishment. This also made Jody and Rumen feel very moved, and they couldn't help but cast grateful eyes to both sides. "Oh? It seems that you have finally learned a little unity and friendship, which is worthy of praise." Anduin nodded with a little relief. Jody and Rumen, who were standing, finally breathed a sigh of relief at this time. It seemed that Anduin was finally willing to let him go. But Anduin's face straightened after praising everyone. Although everyone is willing to forgive him, the discipline does not allow it. After hearing Anduin's words, everyone's face froze, and Joey was even more anxious. But, Chief. No buts. Anduin looked at the two of them seriously. If you make a mistake, you must accept the punishment. This is called fairness. If you only punish the first 2 times, you can use other excuses to save the extra time. Then you can break the discipline at will in the future, right? Anyway, only punish the first 2 times. We don't mean that. The main reason is that Roman's body really can't bear it. Otherwise, you'll let him owe it and let him make up for it tomorrow. Jody tried to argue for Roman. Today's work should be done today. There is no excuse for delay. After saying that, Anduin came in front of Jody and stared at him fiercely. Do you know what the problem is if you always speak for others like this? Chapter 273 Self-Study, asking for monthly ticket recommendation ticket. Jody's face turned pale when Anduin looked at him, and he stammered and couldn't speak. You are partial to me, this is indulgence. If you continue like this, who will respect you? Anduin came to Jody and pointed at the students of the same grade beside him. If a person violates the rules, but does not need to be punished for various reasons, or the punishment is postponed, then for the students around you who strictly abide by the rules, this is the greatest injustice. If I agree to your request, will I be worthy of these strict companions around you? After hearing this, Jody glanced at the people around him awkwardly. When he saw everyone lower their head in silence, he blushed immediately, but Anduin had not finished speaking. Just like Mona, who is in your grade, she has been strict with herself since she walked out of the dormitory this morning. She dresses neatly and has proper dining etiquette. She enters the classroom at least 10 minutes early for class. She will take the initiative to greet the faculty and staff as soon as she sees them. Whenever there are students from the same college around her, they will strictly follow the standard queue of 2 people in a row, 3 people in a column. Anduin said as he approached Jody, and finally whispered in his ear, in my opinion, she wants to be a real Slytherin more than you do. Although Anduin did not shout out this speech, it still had a deafening effect in this quiet environment. This made the little wizards who followed the rules suddenly feel full of power and glory. The chief had actually been looking at them quietly. These self-disciplined wizards couldn't help but proudly straighten their chests. Mona, who was praised by Anduin, was even more excited and blushed with shyness. She was just obedient and did what he said, but she didn't expect the chief to give her such a high evaluation. In stark contrast to her, Jody almost buried his face in his chest, and finally could only utter, I'm sorry, Chief, I was wrong. Lumin, who was next to him, also mustered up the courage to say, it's my problem, not Joey's. I'm willing to accept the punishment. This is what I deserve. Having this awareness proves that you can still be saved, and your physical condition is indeed difficult to continue to accept the punishment. Anduin nodded to Lumin. After hearing Anduin's words, Lumin's heart was rekindled with hope. He thought that the other party was going to show mercy, and looked at him excitedly until he saw Anduin take out a bottle of potion from his arms. This is a painkiller. Your arm is much stronger than you think. You feel that you can't hold on because of muscle pain. Drink some painkillers, and there will be no problem without pain. Anduin used to drop with an expressionless face to feed a few drops of painkillers to the other party, and then turned back to the stone steps, leaving Lumin in the wind. The people around couldn't help but swallow their saliva when they saw this scene. This was too cruel. They would rather give painkillers than complete all the punishments. Afterwards, the little snakes of Slytherin once again witnessed Anduin's extremely strict push-up punishment until everyone finished. Roman, who drank the painkiller, barely insisted on completing the punishment. It can be seen that the effect of the potion is still very good. At this time, a large area of the stone steps was almost wet with the sweat of the punished people. Continue, the next item. Anduin flicked the record board in his hand expressionlessly. Those who did not march in the standard queue are. Anduin once again reported a list of people who violated the discipline expressionlessly, but this time Roman was relieved. This time he was not there. He was really scared. Although he used painkillers, he now felt that his 2 arms were not his own and had no strength at all. The young wizards in the audience also got to see what it means to be extremely rigorous. They just watched Anduin read out a list, called on them to do push-ups, and then moved on to the next item, the next wave. The punishment for each item was like another review of the discipline regulations, making everyone remember the regulations more deeply. Finally, the notification and punishment of violations of discipline were finally over. More than 1/3 of the young wizards in the audience made mistakes on the first day and paid the price for it. Among all the grades today, only the 7th graders did not violate the rules at all. People from other grades made mistakes. Please pay attention to the corresponding grade leaders. And every time you violate the rules, you will not only be punished, but also lose the corresponding grade points. The grade points are reset every month. Every month, there will be a surprise waiting for you for the first and last place. Your performance today was really bad. I hope you won't let me see this again. In the future, the scores and violators will be announced at the weekly meeting. This time, considering that you are the first offender, only 30 push-ups are arranged as punishment. In the future, the punishment will be increased to 50 times. I hope you will take care of yourself. And today's discipline announcement took too long, wasting self-study time, so today's self-study time will be postponed for 2 hours, and the study group activities will be cancelled and postponed for 1 day. Anduin issued the follow-up arrangements in a few words. Then he announced the start of self-study. Because Anduin punished too many people, it took more than an hour, so now it can only be postponed. During the self-study period, the representatives of each subject became active and, according to the transcripts assigned to them by Anduin, found students with poor performance in the corresponding subjects to tutor. Anduin himself was the representative of the defense against the dark arts and ancient runes, and he quickly got into the subject. Anduin as a representative was different from when he was the head of the academy. Compared with Anduin standing on the stone platform and giving orders, he was majestic and ruthless. When tutoring those students, he was calm, gentle, and patient. Even if he had just punished a little wizard, he would treat him equally during the self-study period. Especially when a little wizard bravely stepped forward to ask relevant questions and received his calm, detailed and organized answers, they had a deep understanding of Anduin. When casting a repelling spell, in addition to gestures and incantations, what is more important is the determination in your heart to drive away and repel the target. Otherwise, the spell you cast will be as weak and powerless as the one you took in the exam last year. This is actually the core technique of most offensive or defensive spells. Anduin explained to a young wizard who came to ask for advice. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 274 Dog Monitoring, asking for monthly ticket recommendation ticket. I see. Then, Chief, are you willing to teach us how to cast a spell? Even a demonstration is fine. I really want to see it. Mona, who had been praised by Anduin once before, also came to Anduin's side and interrupted. With your level, you should be able to use this self-defense spell proficiently. Anduin knew Mona's level. Although she was not like Evie and Jenny who had E's, she was very good in most subjects. That's right, Chief. I do understand the principle of this spell, but since there are few practical exercises in the defense against the dark arts class, although my spell casting can cope with the exam, I can't use it proficiently. Mona usually doesn't talk much, but when facing Anduin, she mustered up the courage and said with a red face. So that's how it is. Anduin thought for a moment. After the evening study 3 days later, it will be the defense against the dark arts study group's makeup class time. Although you are not on the makeup class list, if you want to stay and listen to the class, I will demonstrate it to you in person. Thank you, Chief. Mona and the few little wizards beside her stammered and thanked them before slowly turning around and leaving. Anduin's easygoing nature during the evening study also slightly diluted the tense atmosphere of the academy before. When the little wizards found that they could only relax a little when studying, what would they do? That would definitely be studying hard. Now their tense nerves can only be relieved by studying, so their enthusiasm for learning has become even more enthusiastic. And as Anduin announced the end of the self-study time, many little wizards even showed reluctance to leave the stone hall, because they had to be tense from the day after going out the next day. The next day, the little snakes who were knocked on the door by the grade group leader again found that Anduin had disappeared again. They won't be fooled this time. Although they don't know how Anduin did it, observing so many people at the same time, they now know that the chief may be hiding somewhere and watching them. The grade leaders are even more nervous, especially Joey. Half of their 4th graders made mistakes yesterday and were punished. At the same time, Joey also woke up after being educated by Anduin. He knew that if he didn't strictly abide by the rules, it would harm the students around him. Today's inspection of them was simply stripped to the bone. And Lumin, who had suffered 3 punishments last night, was sore all over today, and his arms were like lead, but he still did his housework. Mona. After checking everyone's housework, Jody looked at the female classmate a little embarrassed. He hadn't spoken to her for a few times since he entered school. What's wrong? Mona's expression was also a little stiff when she was called. You know I'm a stupid person, and after the chief's reminder yesterday, I know you're more careful and remember the rules and regulations more clearly, so I want to ask you to help me, or guide me on how to prevent everyone from making mistakes, okay? Jody looked at the girl in front of him with some trepidation. Okay. Mona was a little uncomfortable seeing Joe suddenly become so humble, but she nodded kindly. My God, sir, the conversation between these two guys is too stiff. Do they usually talk like this? A huge dog head came to Anduin's side, sniffed the steaming coffee in his hand, and then stared at the mirror in front of his sight. This is Hog, who looks like a dog but is actually a wolf. He and Anduin are leisurely staying in the dormitory at this time. Anduin elegantly crossed his legs and drank coffee, while Hog was next to him, fiddling with the instrument in front of him with his hands and feet. The device in front of Hog is like a large dressing table, but the upper part is different from the large mirror on an ordinary dressing table. Instead, it is composed of dozens of small mirrors of uniform specifications. Different images can be seen in each mirror, and these images have the figures of one or several little wizards, who are the little snakes of Slytherin. It turns out that Anduin is not like those little wizards, hiding his figure and following them closely. You have to know that Anduin is also a person, and it is impossible for him to appear in several places at the same time to monitor others. He relies on this device in front of him, let's call it a magic monitor. This monitor was actually made at the end of the last school year. At the time, he was going to investigate the details of these little wizards in the college. After tracking them with the disillusionment charm for several weeks, he found that the efficiency was too slow, so he made this thing. It actually uses the principle of shared vision between the Flun network and his Raven spell. When Anduin wants to activate this monitor, he will release dozens of little ravens, cast the disillusionment charm on them, and then share that vision with the mirror. In this way, these little snakes can be monitored closely at any time, and it is very flexible. As long as they are in Hogwarts, they can share in real time. At the same time, he does not have to run around particularly tiredly, and he still has time to do some of his own things. The most excited person about this matter is Hog beside him. He was brought by Kiki the day before yesterday and directly appeared in Anduin's dormitory. Although he stayed in Hogwarts last school year, he had never entered the castle. He was very excited to suddenly come to a new place. And who knew that when he came to Anduin's dormitory, he found this magical thing in front of him, which was much more interesting than chewing the table legs. So Hog volunteered to supervise these little wizards for Anduin. It happened that Anduin also felt that he could not watch so many surveillances by himself, so he asked him to join in. Then Anduin saw what a real surveillance person, oh no, a surveillance dog is. Hog seemed to be able to merge with the surveillance device in front of him. Not only could he observe different mirrors with his left and right eyes at the same time, but he could also capture the fleeting violation of discipline in great detail. You should know that Anduin caught almost all the little wizards who violated the rules yesterday, and he also clearly pointed out their violations. None of the people he pointed out cried out for injustice, but they all admitted their mistakes on the spot and accepted the punishment. Such an exaggerated monitoring accuracy rate has further deterred the little wizards who violated the rules, and it is simply the kind of thing that makes people feel scared. And all of this was actually done by Hog. After Anduin confirmed yesterday that he was not as good as this dog in watching the surveillance, he ran to the Forbidden Forest hub to barbecue and play with cats in the afternoon. At this time, Hog squinted his eyes and stared at the surveillance mirror, staring straight, with a look of concentration. And when you think he is just staring in one direction at this time, his eyeballs will tremble around at an outrageous speed. Then he grinned, smiled coldly, and flexibly grabbed the feather pen with his dog paws, and recorded it carefully on a piece of parchment. Chapter 275 3 Categories of Disciplines, asking for monthly recommendation tickets. Have you memorized the names of these little wizards? Anduin couldn't help but confirm when he saw Hog had achieved something so quickly. Don't worry, sir. I don't need you to point them out to me afternoon yesterday. Didn't I record them very accurately yesterday afternoon? Hog looked confident and seemed to be at ease with this job. Compared to being able to only fire at one person in diagonally, Hog was obviously more interested in watching surveillance, which could fire at more than 100 people at a time. Anduin was also happy to be free, and with Hog's assistance, he could use his free time to make the teaching aid he had envisioned before. As a student who could achieve excellent grades in all subjects, Anduin actually had a considerable understanding of the Hogwarts exams, or the test-taking level of the wizarding world. Among the 7 main courses and 5 secondary courses at Hogwarts, Anduin classified them according to the courses, reading, writing, memorizing, or practical spellcasting, and roughly divided them into 3 categories: theoretical knowledge subjects, theoretical practice subjects, and spellcasting practice subjects. Among them, those subjects that mainly rely on memory, understanding, and observation, as long as you are willing to spend time reading books and memorizing, or have enough test-taking skills, such as marking key points and cramming, you can get good grades. Anduin called them theoretical knowledge subjects. This type of course mainly includes history of magic, arithmetic, divination, Muggle studies, and divination. Of course, this is classified according to the test needs in Hogwarts. It does not mean that these subjects do not require spellcasting at all. If you want to study in depth, many of them also require strong spellcasting practical ability, such as arithmetic, divination, and divination. But divination class is quite outrageous in Hogwarts. Basically, Professor Trelawney has never really taught others how to divination, and the exam for this course is mainly a written test. For the little wizards in the Serpentine Academy, after Anduin arranged self-study time, theoretical knowledge subjects that mainly rely on reading, writing and memory are no longer a big problem. Of course, for these subjects, he takes the exams and grades as the ultimate goal. This type of course is relatively simple for people like Anduin who are familiar with test-taking skills. The strategies he uses are basically highlighting, sea of questions and predicting questions. He instructed several subject representatives to collect the exam contents of the subject in previous years. Whether they rely on their own memories or contact with seniors who have graduated, they must record the frequently tested contents of each professor. Then he will arrange for the subject representatives to highlight the frequently tested areas of grades 1 to 5 at the college committee meeting, and directly use the original questions of previous years as the test questions for the next monthly exam, so that both the highlighting and the monthly exam questions are available. As for predicting questions, he mainly divides it into 2 parts. On the one hand, before the future exam, let the subject representatives predict the questions based on experience, and on the other hand, collect the questions that the professors lead during class. In fact, after entering Hogwarts, Anduin was quite speechless about the exams in the school, because most of the professors had serious problems with missing questions. In fact, as long as you write them down and recite them repeatedly after returning, you can easily get a good score. But even so, there are still a lot of little wizards who fail or barely pass the exam. But now it is different. Anduin is going to manage the exams in a unified way. Although it is only the beginning of the semester, many teachers missed questions not before the end of the semester, but when they just started to learn a certain spell or knowledge point. So Anduin arranged the group leaders of each grade to organize the test collection team to summarize the test questions of each grade and subject, so that they can rush to do away at the end of the semester. The theoretical and practical subjects in the subject classification belong to subjects with a lot of theoretical content, but more practice is required, and at the same time, spellcasting is not very frequent. Many of the theoretical knowledge also requires a lot of memorization and understanding to pass the exam. The exams for these subjects generally depend on the professor's preferences, and there are both practical and written exams. Among them, the 4 courses classified by Anduin as theoretical and practical subjects include herbalism, astronomy, ancient runes, and magical animal protection. For example, in astronomy and ancient runes courses, only a small part requires spellcasting, and astronomy mainly relies on identifying constellations, but there are often practical exams at the end of the semester. If you don't learn ancient runes in depth, you only need to master some translation content. However, ancient runes are magical words, so there will be spellcasting practice in teaching and senior exams. The study of these 2 courses is basically similar to theoretical knowledge subjects, mainly relying on reading books and a little practice. Biology and magical creature protection require more practical content. If you want to make up for these 2 subjects, you can only rely on rich experience to explain them out of thin air. After all, many herbs and magical animals cannot be brought to the public lounge. Among them, the magical animals needed for magical creature protection actually have many entities in the Forbidden Forest hut, and Anduin is very familiar with Hagrid and Professor Gettlebirn, but he doesn't want to trouble them. In order to solve this problem, he plans to use one of the 2 newly developed teaching aids to assist. This is actually the large curtain that Anduin used when he started school. The curtain is actually woven with a silk thread of Inspiration's no cicada and ordinary silk. The Inspiration's no cicada is a material that Karkaroff specially collected from Northern Europe. Its characteristic is that it has a good affinity for thinking and memory. In order to find a way to treat the Longbottom couple, he asked Karkaroff to collect a lot of books and materials related to thinking and memory. This kind of silk thread can sense the changes in thinking, so Anduin made it into this big curtain, which can present what people think in their minds at any time on the curtain, whether it is text or pictures. He plans to lend it to students who are taking these 2 courses, and the class representatives will manifest the herbs or magical animals in their memories on the curtain to assist the young wizards in semi-practical learning. The last so-called casting practice subjects refer to those subjects that require regular casting practice, and the exams are mainly based on practical exams. Of course, there are also many theoretical contents, but their written test scores generally account for a small proportion. These include transfiguration, charms, potions, and defense against the dark arts. These courses require spells to be cast in class or during exams, so sufficient practice are required, and sufficient understanding of the principles of spell casting is required, otherwise it is difficult to improve. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.